Well, friends, we made it. Dusklight through the seasons. It doesn't feel like it was 5 years ago on the 14th of April 2021 when Dusklight Radio went back on the airwaves. Lord have mercy, I sounded not nearly as corporeal, esoterical, or grandiose as I do now. Now, I won't take up much of your time, but this is a celebration of what made Dusklight special. Now, there is no 2022 option because we didn't broadcast that year, and upon reflection of your community voting, we noticed that if we had utilized the pick for 2024, Autopsy of Doe 77B, and then went into Chapter 1, it might be a little bit confusing, so with humble apologies, we have switched that one out for Tortoise and Tarot's Part 1 and Prologue, as that was a perfect example of what we were doing at the time with the lovely spirit voices. We've also added in one extra tale from 2021 to satiate your palates. Now, all the introductions and outros have been cut, except for our first video. Purely because it's a fun way to look back at the production at the time, and we enjoy the progress we've made, the community we've cultivated, and the stories we get to tell. And we've also decided to include one of our favorite picks from 30 and 30 as the final video to show that full circle journey. That's all I gotta say, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. Thank you for being a part of our community for 5 beautiful years. Here's to 5 more. Close your eyes and breathe with me. The scene has been set and the light is on. It's time to walk towards it. Happy New Year. Most heartfelt greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlethems. I eagerly welcome you to Sturgeon's most premier station, Dusklight Radio, hosted by yours truly, the effervescent Everett J. Blackwell. Perhaps you know of us. We operated the rent-a-spirit service in town for a century. We even had that centennial discount, buy one specter, get a haunting free. A lot of folks got in on their revenge hauntings. We even had a mascot, Petey the Poltergeist, advising you to ensure your will clearly stipulates you want to haunt your enemies after death instead of sleeping eternally. He didn't catch on with the skeleton folk. If you're just joining us or this is your first video here, welcome. I'm Dusklight's main and most wonderful undead host. My job at this fine radio establishment is to bring you some of the most twisted, interesting, and downright bizarre tales that I and my wonderful many-legged runners collect from the far corners of Sturgeon and beyond. Some of them will make you laugh, some will make you cry, and some will help fight off the urges to try the succulent juices of forbidden flesh. Disclaimer, this does not guarantee your cravings will be gone, and Dusklight FM is not responsible for any feedings, consensual or otherwise. We got a lot of trouble for the last time. With that, it's time to introduce our story for this evening. It comes to us from experimental raconteur and perennial pet owner Max Voynich, a man well known for his strange tales and unusual premises. His next story here, The 18 Lives of Omen the Cat, is a tale about Omen and his, 18 lives. Yep, sometimes the work speaks for itself, people. If you like his work, and well, why wouldn't you? You can find more at his central hub of stories linked below, and as luck would have it, he has a show that looks back at a forgotten television series with some rather sinister undertones. Happy and We Know It is available wherever you consume your audio delights. Special thanks must be first given to Mandy Moe for rendering yours truly in the beauteous image you see when you look at our page. Next, Dusklight bows at the altar of Trevor Henderson, the man behind Siren Head, for allowing Dusklight to use some of the images he's captured of various abominations. Our cast today features narrator TJ Lee, Dusklight's very own janitor shirking off his work again, and the wonderful Romnex, one of the main patrons keeping this place on the air. And last, but by no means least, Some of the music you hear today is provided by the Dark Somnium, with gracious thanks. With that, the sun has set and dusk has crawled into the studio once more. Whether you're working, prepping to sleep, or evading the formless void that will one day consume us all, Blackwell is here to soothe your ears and captivate your soul. Now, close your eyes and take in a deep breath. The scene has been set and the light is on. It's time to walk towards it. One. It was a shock when our family cat Nancy passed away whilst giving birth to a litter of only one kitten. And even a further shock when we noticed that this particular kitten, wrinkled and pink, had two heads. Pa said it was an omen. An omen of what? The kitten made a noise, halfway between a squeak and a cough. Pa paused. I don't know. We were silent for a bit whilst we thought on this. We didn't know either, but no one could doubt that it had to mean something. It made for a good name, though. Omen. And so it stuck. The vet told us Omen didn't have long for this world. Said that animals and mutations like this rarely lasted more than a few weeks at best. He suggested we make a quick bit of cash and find a museum or a lab nearby to sell them to. 2 heads, 2 sets of genitals, he said. Omen was a 5-figure paycheck waiting to happen. We refused. Omen was ours. In the end, Omen would end up outliving that vet. And part of me, although I know it can't be true, believes that Omen always held a grudge against him for what he told us that morning. The vet made a joke in poor taste as we left. Might last a little longer. You never know. 9 lives and all. I remember our whole family watching the way Pa looked to Omen's 2 heads, and then back to the vet. 18, he corrected. 18 lives. 2. We spent the next few months hand-feeding Omen, both of their heads desperately hungry. Ma would often joke that it was like they had 2 stomachs, with the amount of milk they get through. We'd take turns to feed him in the night, and even though I was much too young to be staying up that late, they could see how much this cat meant to me, and they'd give me an hour or 2 after dark. Omen had the most beautiful black coat, with sleek white socks and a small cream spot like a monk on the top of their left head. The heads would sometimes chatter to each other, and meek little mews when they were alone, as if comparing notes on their new body. Omen always ate better if they could sit on your lap, nestling their body in the fold of your legs whilst both your hands would hold 2 small bottles for them to suckle from. Sometimes I'd sneak out of bed and sleep on the floor in Omen's room, only to be found and scolded by my parents when the morning came. But they didn't mind, really. Omen was our favorite. 3. On the morning before his first birthday, Omen brought in a 2-headed mouse, clamped in the right head's jaws. The thing was limp and it made a soft pat when they dropped it on the floor. I must have been 12 at the time, but I remember poking the mouse with a brush, turning it over to have a better look at each head. I was so absorbed in the rodent's strange biology, I completely ignored the sound of my mom and pa coming to stand behind me, hands on hips, watching me watch it. I think it's a message, Pa said. Mom made a noise.
I think they're telling us they're not alone.
Both the Omen's heads mewed in sync, as if to agree. 4. We went on holiday as a family, and as much as it pained us, we were unable to bring Omen. Omen knew something was up when they saw us putting our clothes in the bags, and when we all left at once, and they tried to sink their claws into our shoes to beg us not to go. But we had to, and we did. When we returned, sunburned and at ease, we found that Omen had taken the time to smash every single clock in the house. 5. Omen would bring in all sorts of creatures. Rodents, small birds, beetles it found interesting, frogs, toads, and even fish every now and again. One evening in particular, the family were gathered around the TV, watching I can't remember what, when Omen strolled in, sat straight in front of the screen, attention please, and dropped the bottom half of a squirrel at its feet. The organs and intestines were hanging out, putrid and red, and we could see the way Omen's fur was matted around the mouth.
He thinks we're hungry, trying to feed us,
Paul said. Disgusting!
Don't look half bad.
If you're so hungry, you can clean it up. Omen watched with disappointment as Paul dropped the offering into the bin, though I didn't miss the whisper that followed.
Sorry, Omen.
6. We lived in a big house, and family and friends would often cycle through, staying in various rooms when they encountered problems of their own or just needed a roof over their head for a while. Our uncle came to stay with us during the last days of his life. There was no more modern medicine could do for him, and he told everyone he wanted to die with dignity. We obliged him. And so, for the last week of his life, Uncle lived as normal a life as he could, told stories until he grew too tired, never complained, and despite our protests, slipped Omen meat and fish under the dinner table. Around 24 hours before he died, Omen took up a vigil by his bedside. We'd been advised by the nurses that we should keep Omen away, and having a cat that close would only cause trouble, and she'd never know where your pet had been. But that day, Omen wouldn't budge. They hissed and bared their teeth whenever anybody made a motion to pick him up, and the whole thing quickly became more hassle than it was worth. It was clear Uncle was deteriorating, and we didn't want to disturb what could be his final moments. Omen lay on his stomach without moving for water or food all day. Both of their heads stood watch, making periodical sweeps of the room, examining the doorway. About an hour before he passed, Omen watched something, invisible to the rest of us, enter through the door and come to stand by Uncle's bed. Omen mewed softly, pleadingly. The sound grew and grew until eventually, Omen was silent. 5 minutes later, whilst holding Mama's hand, Uncle nodded, as if greeting an old friend, and took his last breath. 7. Ma told us she was pregnant. In response, Omen sneezed twice, one for each head. 8. Ma had twins, and God, Omen loved the twins. From the moment they came home, Omen was all over them, transfixed by their angelic little faces, their impossibly thin wisps of air, their laughs and their cries. I could almost hear Omen's thought process as the both heads stared up at the newcomers. 2 of them, just like us. 2 of them. 9. A local kid who must have been roughly the same age as the twins at that point, say around 4, fell from the top of their garden wall and broke their skull in the concrete below. Our neighbors told us that they found Omen at the scene, lapping at the pool of blood as if it was cream in a saucer. The broken child was taken to intensive care immediately, but despite the doctor's best efforts, the child didn't make it. Omen came home with blood matted in the fur around their mouths and turned their noses up at the dinner we prepared. They were full. 10. An old woman with matted hair and yellow teeth came to the door. She said that she'd seen our cat and she would pay good money to take him off our hands. She looked like a ghost dragged through a swamp. Her skin was so pale you could see the mass of veins underneath contracting like small worms, and when she spoke, it made my skin hurt. Cats like that are bad luck, she said. Touched by the devil, she said. But we told her that they were ours and that they were family. She snarled and spat on our front door. I'll see you soon, she said. 11. One night I heard a noise from the kitchen. Upon investigating, I found that someone was banging against the door. I recognized the voice. The woman from the week before. She was hammering the door now with her fist, frantically.
Let me in. Let me in. Let me in.
She said over and over and over and over again. I stood, paralyzed by fear. There was something about her I didn't trust, that I couldn't trust. I'd seen the way she looked at Omen, like she wanted them for something. Then the noise spread over out the house, and I was aware of the windows on 3 separate sides of the room, and that through each window, as I turned, I could make out the same dark figure, pounding against the glass, screeching. It was as if there were several of her. All silhouettes, all at once, begging and pleading to be let in. And the voice cracked and changed, grew hoarser and harsher, and before long she didn't sound much like a woman at all, but something hungry and vicious. Pa eventually came down and found me hiding under the table. Omen was sat, facing the door, tail flicking from side to side. Pa said that in the following silence, he could hear the heads chattering away to one another. He said they sounded serious, concerned. 12. I was brushing my teeth the following week, just after my shower, when I heard something scratch at the door. I tried to ignore it. Sometimes Omen would do this, beg to be let in after you'd had a shower so they could drink the water around the drain, but Ma had said we had to stop Omen from their more unsavory habits in case we had guests. I kept the door firmly shut. Omen grew more and more persistent, raking their claws down the wood and mewing as if there was a fire. I could have sworn the door was shut, but in my reflection, behind me, I could make out the door start to open, slowly, fraction by fraction. And my hand stopped moving the brush, leaving it stuck in my mouth like a cocktail stick, when I saw a hand slowly emerge from the door in the reflection. A hand and a face that I recognized. A gnarled and ancient face, all gums and loose skin, and I could see the woman slowly force her way into the room in the mirror, and, falling backwards, it was all I could do to try and grab the door, slipping on the handle. The door flew open, in both real life and the reflection, and as I staggered back, I could see the woman now dead on, smiling, reaching out towards the surface, towards me. And my hand found something hard and heavy, and it was all I could do to throw it at the mirror. There was a crash, the sounds of falling glass, and the silence. It took me a while to absorb my surroundings, for the adrenaline to wear off. I'd thrown my alarm clock, the heavy brass thing that was so loud it was impossible not to wake up. Omen was sat by the shattered clock, their 2 faces reflected endlessly in the dozens of mirror shards that covered the floor, blinking and preening themselves, before stepping closer and pushing their forehead against mine. Just for a moment, I felt as if I touched something old and dark and so hot, and then Omen pulled away and left me to clean up the mess. 13. The twins were followed home by a strange man in a long coat, with thin blonde hair that he'd very carefully slicked back over his otherwise bald head. He made lewd gestures at them, which they could repeat but not understand, and said words that made Ma blush. Ma said she'd found the man by our gate, staring into Omen's eyes, all 4 of them, without blinking. Said she told the man she'd call the police, and that he should get off our property this instant. But the man stayed still, wouldn't take his eyes off Omen, spoke strange words to himself under his breath, prayed. When the policeman came, sometime later, the man was gone. 14. The strange man made local headlines, filling his pockets of rocks and throwing himself into the river. They said he finally lost it, and the weight of whatever he'd done had finally caught up to him. But I knew something had happened that day. Omen had shown the man something in that moment. Shown the man something so real and terrifying he'd had no choice but to drown himself. And, as if to confirm my suspicions, Omen coughed up a wet, blonde hairball. 15. Omen discovered catnip and spent 3 days in a daze, like some sort of feline junkie, until Ma caught them staring at their own reflection. Embarrassed, Omen quit their newfound habit there and then. 16. Omen brought in the top half of the squirrel whilst we were watching TV. The twins laughed. Pa said, "Looks familiar." Ma said she felt something a little like deja vu. Try as we might, we couldn't place it. 17. Omen was sick in the night, and when we took him to the vet, she showed us her tattoo of a 2-headed cat.
It's just like yours. I've never seen a real one.
she said, feigning surprise. But the look she shared with Omen made me think otherwise. 18. Omen spent their last 5 nights with each one of us. First Pa, then Ma, then the twins for 1 night each, and last of all, me. They slept by my side, purring like kindling whenever I'd tickle one of their chins. We both knew that their time was nearly up. They were growing old, and what had once been muscle and fat had quickly become skin and bone. Their eyes were not as sharp and had developed a thin, milky membrane. Sometimes one head would wake the other, and they'd spend a while bickering before they realized they were talking to themselves. Before they passed, they made one last slow circuit of the house, checking behind each door and under each bed, as if to say, to us and to the twins, "See, you're safe now." We buried Omen under their favorite tree, in a little wooden box we filled with shredded newspaper. Just above the box, to commemorate Omen, we planted a single orchid. We thought that every time we looked out and saw the flower, we'd be reminded of our friend, our protector. And it was a surprise to none of us when, a month later, we saw 2 green buds rising from the soil. Well, aside from our janitor trying to imitate me, I feel a little emotional. If corpses can feel emotion, that is. I think I'm gonna go hug my pangolin, Baron von Scalington, and let him know that I love him very, very much. Maybe you should do the same, if you have any pets you love. Failing that, maybe a plushie or an exotic pet from the next dimension, whatever you prefer. If you enjoyed this video and you stuck to the end, you have my thanks. Be sure to check out some of our other transmissions. We're adding them regularly, and we'd love to have you as part of the Dusklight family by subscribing, hitting the bell of oblivion. It's just a normal bell, but adding stuff like that is nice. And leave a comment with stories you'd love for my many-legged runners to find for me to read. And, one last time, listeners, close your eyes and breathe with me. Remember, no matter how bad things are, Dusklight will be here to provide you with some respite. Drink some water or your state-mandated potions. You matter, and you are loved. I'll see you again when the sun sets and dusk enters the station.
I've been losing an average of 30 minutes of sleep every night for the past 10 days. Now I'm down to a paltry 4 hours and 30 minutes. My walls are beginning to shift and my vision is blurring. I have to focus. I need to focus. Someone out there has to know what happened. Does anyone know why the garbage collectors have switched to the night shift? Even asking it sends shivers down my spine. It's late and soon I will hear them turn up to collect. I can't sleep upstairs anymore. Not where they can see me. Now I sleep in the living room with my gun propped against my shoulder, the weight a stern reminder that I am present. I am awake. I am a threat to them. They won't try anything if I'm a threat to them, right? Fuck. I'm sorry. Let me explain. My name is Tyson. I'm a farmer with a thriving family, a loving wife, and 2 bright young boys. We live in a very remote area that requires a significant amount of divergence for basic services. I won't say where, and I won't risk my family or my business, especially knowing what kind of armchair detectives there are out there. I respect you all for what you do and fear you in equal measure. Though, admittedly, I don't think you'd find a place like Sturgeon even if you tried. It's vast, complex, and not easy to traverse if you don't know the area. So I'd rather throw you a bone you could thoroughly chew on as opposed to delving into mine and my family's personal information. What I can tell you is this patch of land has been in my family for 6 generations. It was not acquired illegally, built on sacred land, and to the best of my knowledge, has never had a violent occurrence or bloodshed. We're just normal, hard-working folks who have always tried to do right. Which makes what's going on here all the more difficult to understand, to quantify and reason when the basic logic gives way. I hear you. You're undoubtedly scratching your heads and asking, why are the garbage collectors such an issue? And I don't blame you. But I'll get to that. Something shifted by the gates. No sound. Can't be the Garbagemen. You hear them a mile off. They're not subtle about making their presence known. The first night they turned up was so startling that I honest to God thought they were being robbed by the most unprofessional thieves this part of the world had ever birthed. Rambunctious, loud, and borderline jovial in their candor. It was always the same, each and every time. The sounds of the huge mechanical vehicle roaring as it drove up my dirt road, crushing twigs and kicking up dirt as it ground to a stop by the gates some 50 feet from my front door. 2 thuds. Boots hitting the ground, stumbling over to the main gate where our trash was left for the Garbagemen on a Tuesday. Usually a couple of surly men got out, grunted, and hauled ass out of the area as soon as possible. These two? Couldn't have been happier to be there from the sounds of things. Young men, the smiles almost visible in their tone.
This the one, Bill? Looks ready to me.
I reckon it is, Jeff. Let's get her done.
A laugh, a high five, the sounds of something being dragged and thrown into the truck before they'd back out of the driveway and go off into the night. Unusual, right? My wife and kids certainly thought so, especially when the trash was still there the next morning. Maybe there were some kids pulling a prank, my wife would remark, taking a sip from her coffee and glancing nervously out the window. I think she was saying it more for our boys to benefit than my own. I nodded and ushered them away from the windows and told them to go play. But the next night, it happened again. No specific time so much as that dead of night period between 1 in the morning and 3 in the morning when the world falls totally silent around you. None of our animals made a peep during that time frame, nor did we dare to. Because when we heard them roll up again, we were paralyzed with fear. It took a few minutes to realize it, but when I looked to my wife and she returned my fearful glance with a wide-eyed stare and a nod, we scooped up the boys and huddled into our bed. The exact same sounds, the exact same timed footsteps, the exact same conversation. We heard them drag something wet into the truck before leaving after maybe 15 minutes. My younger boy Jace was always anxious, and hearing this uncanny valley shit at his age sent him into a panic attack. We spent the remaining time soothing him while my older son Travis took to peering through the window behind me. Our pig pen that lay some 40 feet to the right of the house had the door ripped off the hinges and a blood trail leading from the entrance all the way to the farm gates where the Garbagemen had been. When we mustered up the courage to inspect further, the pigs were silent, unmoving and staring at the long dirt road that led away from the home, the tall trees that littered our farm looming overhead as if to silence them from telling what they'd seen. We tried calling the city council to complain, but they were as perplexed as we were. Said trash pickup day was still Tuesday, and that since it was only Saturday, we weren't due. They advised we file a complaint with the police for trespassers, but that yielded absolutely nothing. And in the meantime, things escalated. Night 3 brought us the same routine, same sounds. Even after we'd taken to putting a lock on the pig pen, they still took one. This time making sure to leave a small pile of viscera behind. Perhaps as a warning. We elected to putting the animals in the barn and deadbolting it, hoping the pranksters would get the message and perhaps get bored. I'd ordered a CCTV camera, but with my location being so out of the way, it was going to take time to arrive, and I wasn't about to stand in my window with a camera pointed out at some weirdos. We didn't consider the consequences of this defiance. It was night 5. The boys were sleeping in our room, and like clockwork, they showed up and pulled me from the little sleep I was getting, my wife soon after. Silently, goosebumps raised on our skin and a chill in our bones. We strained our ears against the open window, hoping to hear the frustration and subsequent decision to leave. The routine continued until Jeff spoke to Bill. The moment they opened their mouths, I knew something was horribly, horribly wrong.
This the one, Bill? Looks locked to me.
I reckon it is, Jeff. Let's pay him a visit.
They rattled our front doorknob and politely knocked at the door. 5 rhythmic knocks. 5 seconds of silence. 5 more aggressive knocks. I bolted downstairs and grabbed my rifle, keeping the lights off but my aim focused on him. Adrenaline pushing fear aside, if only to defend my family. I don't know who the fuck you are, but you've been coming onto my property unannounced and I ain't standing for it no more. I pulled back on the bolt and the sound filled the room. You got 3 seconds to turn on your heel or I'm firing. My eyes adjusted to the front door and in the darkness, 2 shapes stood behind my door, shrouded in the shadow of night. They were tall, thin legs and bizarre movements like they were swaying in place. Those 3 seconds felt like a fucking eternity. 1! The shadow to the front leaned forward, trying to press its face against the glass. Something was wrong. 2! It moved away and tapped the letterbox, testing if it opened up. When it did, it held it open and spoke as the second shadow stepped closer. 3 never came. Instead, I backed away out of terror and barricaded our room, unable to speak. It repeated my last words back at me. Exact same pitch, exact same tone, but something was off about it. Like hearing your own voice played back through old speakers, you sense an eeriness to it. As I'd instinctively taken steps back, however, the other one spoke. This was the first time either had said anything that didn't either repeat. And I swear to God, it makes my heart pound in my throat just typing it. We have come to collect. Come outside. My legs carried my body before I could register what was going on. Rushing to the bedroom and locking it, I pulled my family in close and held my head down to theirs, desperate to block out whatever ungodly sounds erupted from our front door. It took half an hour before they gave up, assumed their usual routine and left, the sound of the tires speeding off up the road bringing some degree of relief. Until the following morning when our nearest neighbors, the Gundersons, reported a break-in at their farm some 5 miles up the road. The perpetrators had smashed through the gate, entered the barn and done such violent acts to their cattle that of the 10 that had been attacked and mutilated, only 2 had survived and were immediately put out of their misery by the patriarch, Ted.
You been having them problems with those sons of bitches too, Ty?
He bellowed down the phone once I began retelling our sleepless events.
Shit, you sound like hell and probably look worse than the cows at this point. I ain't having it. You got a young family to support, and when they hurt one of us, they hurt all of us. Tonight we put an end to it, you hear?
I nodded, agreeing to stake out our property that night and do whatever needed to be done. Hands still shaking, I grabbed a stiff drink from the cabinet. Never been much of a drinker. Most of this was my dad's for the tougher times. But if the times weren't tough now, I don't know when the fuck they would be. Ted rolls up around 11 p.m. Wife and kids are asleep, and we shoot the shit in the living room for a while, mainly discussing how the harvest has gone and what we could do to protect our livelihoods in this day and age. The conversation petered off as they often do when a night draws on, but it was as we fell silent that the realization swept over us. We were going to confront these people tonight. I gripped my gun a little tighter and Ted gave me an assuring nod, peeking out the window for any signs of the Garbagemen.
Son of a... My farm!
He bellowed, springing to his feet and bursting out the door before I could get a word in edgeways. He was halfway down the road before I could ask him what the fuck he was doing. He turned, his eyes wild with fear and rage, pointing a shaking finger to the small shape that was his house far across the hill. It was on fire. Large pillars of smoke billowing forth as the fire danced in the light, illuminating the surrounding fields. I can't sit here while my livelihood burns away, Ty. If those bastards are behind this, well, you can bet your ass they won't last the night when I'm through with them. I'll teach them a fucking lesson about the value of things. The things people throw away. With that, he turned on his heel and ran to his truck, speeding off before anything more could be said. This would be the only night the Garbagemen don't pay us a visit. I get a bit of extra sleep, but my wife doesn't. She just stares out the window at the Gunderson farm in the distance and shakes her head. She knows how there will be no help on the horizon. She knows how close we are to that fate. And seeing that scares me to death. The 8th night. They arrive with no vehicle sounds, the grand build-up to the crescendo of their routine. They whistle softly as if calling an animal, patient in their call as they scrape something around in the dirt. I'm crippled by fear and cannot dream facing them. I look around in the dark and see Lucy is still asleep. Travis is snoring in the corner, but Jace, my boy, he's wide awake and transfixed. And staring at the window overlooking our driveway, reaching out to open it. I leap out of bed and just about tackle him away. The shock of waking up to such a violent affair sending him into a panic attack as the entire family snaps awake in a frenzy, shouting over one another as he cries uncontrollably. This has gotta stop, Tyson. We can't do this anymore. We can't live like this. My wife was right. Lucy was exhausted, her eyes barely open and her teeth chattering. In the moment of silence between us, the whistling started again, almost mocking it in its tone if it weren't for the sinister giggling behind it. Shut up, shut the fuck up and leave us alone! She screamed, walking towards that same window. It took everything I had to hold her back and she fell to pieces in my arms, the entire family crippled by nerves and a lack of sleep. It was only when the one voice cut the air that the final night's events were set in motion. The things people throw away. Oh, fuck. Ted. One look into my wife's eyes and I knew what she was thinking. There was no stopping her. She darted around, packing the kids' clothes and any essentials she could find, ignoring the whistling outside and instructing our boys to focus on getting whatever they needed. She turned to me. You do what you need to do. I don't care if the nearest town is a 3-hour drive or I undergo the 7-hour drive to my mom's. I will not stay another night in this fucking house. Not until they're gone. She was almost delirious, fueled by fear and anger as she darted around like a hurricane, turning over the tables to get what she needed as if prepping for a weather event. Within a half hour she'd been rushing around, the noises had faded and the outside, once again, fell silent. I couldn't leave the house. It had been in our family's lineage for generations. We'd been born here, lived here, and died here no matter what. As the head of the family, it was my job to stay here and protect it, even if I couldn't protect those that I loved the most under its roof. She waited another hour before getting in the car and leaving, kissing me with all the passion she'd had when we first met. I told Jace that he had to be strong, and that he'd one day conquer his fears because I believed in him. I told Travis that as the eldest, he needed to protect them like his life depended on it. Then, just like that, I waved them goodbye and promised I'd join them at their mother-in-law's when this was over. Now all that was left was to sharpen my resolve and find out what this was. I took the chance to try and get some sleep during the day, but no matter how hard I tried, it wouldn't come to me. So liquid courage it was. One way or another, this was going to end. Night 9. The penultimate night. Not a sound. I mean that in the most literal sense. The wind didn't move, the trees didn't speak, not a single blade of grass danced, and no dirt was kicked up. Everything was silent. So silent. My own thoughts were amplified in this void of sound. Every inane thought of what could happen flitted through my mind and forced me to double-check every fucking window and door. Triple-check the locks, ensure no oversight was left. Couldn't let them get an opportunity, even if it's just me. I know they're watching even now. If I didn't know any better, I'd have said a shadow move just behind the porch window. I can't be sure. Not without checking. I think they were biding their time, keeping me on edge and making sure that I knew they could step in whenever they wanted and do as they pleased. But I kept my nerve. I resisted the urge to bolt to the truck. I've got my whiskey, and I've got my gun. I'll see this through, even if it kills me. Night 10. Now we're all caught up. I checked on the animals this morning. What was left was a pile of bones, flesh, and waste. They'd been taken the night before, and I don't know how I didn't hear during the silence. There was but one horse's body left. Teeth marks riddled the torso, and the legs had been torn off. Our crops had grown fetid, decayed, and worn. Nothing in our farm would yield a goddamn thing anymore. My livelihood was decimated in front of my eyes. Gone. It's late now. I'm sat in my armchair with the rifle loaded and ready. My hands are shaking and my knee won't stop bouncing. I feel the dread start in my gut and worm its way through my chest before lodging in my throat and forcing every breath to be a labor of pain. They came early tonight. Truck roaring and routine sounds in full swing. Only, there weren't 2 sets of thuds this time. There were 6. We walked up to the porch, a shadow covering every facet of the window and door panes. Not a speck of light coming through. The voices don't change their pattern. They never do.
This the one, Bill? Looks ready to me.
They pound their fists against the window, a dull moan emanating from the background, pained, muffled, and growing in strength.
I reckon it is, Jeff. Let's get her done.
Nails drag down the glass, a horrific groaning accompanying the repeated intonations of their godforsaken phrases.
The things people throw away.
Oh, Ted. Poor Ted. Smashing his head against the wall, repeating it with every 6 swing. It was only when I heard the 4th voice that I finally looked out the window. Perhaps on instinct.
Not until they're gone.
My Lucy. My sweet Lucy calling to me. I can't begin to tell you what I saw when I pulled back the curtains for just a split second. But every forbidden aspect of it is burned into my brain, and it will not leave me even as I shut my eyes from the surrounding chorus of madness. My kids. My fucking kids are now saying they've come to collect. That I must come outside. That whistle has come back, and it's almost soothing. I can't bear to do this on my own. I can't live with that image in my fucking skull anymore. I miss my wife. I miss my kids. I miss sleeping soundly at night. What if it's them out there? What if they're really just wanting me to get help, and my own sick mind has put me in such a state that I'm here, asking you all for help on something that is, at its core, just truly simple? I'm gonna put the laptop down and open the door. I have to know. I have to. Why did the Garbagemen start coming in the dead of night? Does anyone know?
It must sound so silly, losing track of something that's attached to you. I'm sure some folks already have the sun went down, didn't it statement at the ready for me. But I'm being serious. I cannot find my shadow, and I'm desperate to have it back. I don't know where else to turn. Everett, I'm hoping you can help me. It's remarkable how easily we can come to accept mundane oddities as just a part of our everyday lives. Brushing the only piece of our skeleton that sits outside our flesh twice a day, experiencing moments of no breathing followed by choking during heavy sleep. And our shadow. That long, featureless black frame that looms over all that we do. A silent participant that we only occasionally pay any attention to on particularly slow days, or where our shadow sits in a unique spot. I suppose I'm trying to make it more glamorous than it actually is. I guess I have an admiration for the odd things we accept as normalcy. My full-body shadow was no different from anyone else's. A simple, tall, thin figure that walked and moved in sync with me. I did, however, have a skill manipulating parts of it. Shadow puppetry.
I reveled in making fun and fantastical creatures by bending my fingers in just the right way. My friends loved it. My family even more so. Dogs, cats, dragons, and alpacas. I found such joy in bringing them to life or testing myself to find new ways to captivate audiences. I was a born entertainer and an artist. But on occasion, I'd feel the urge to snap my digits in unusual ways. Never painful, or at least it never felt painful in the moment. But it sure as hell looked it to anyone privy to the show, I'm sure. The aching after was well worth it. My pinky would tuck itself underneath my ring finger, wrapping itself around as the joint stretched and strained, other fingers accommodating while my wrists jerked and shuddered. On the screen was a different story. Fantastical shadow cities filled with great spires, Georgian manor houses, market stalls filled with hungry, vibrant souls. My hands could make more than anyone ever imagined. Eventually, the shows grew from the backyards and school talent shows to being booked in Sturgeon's Grand Hall, opening for the fabulous Decolters, a troupe of gymnasts, Vantablack manipulators, and nightmare catchers. My act would involve using my fingers and toes, a bright spotlight, and a lot of improvisation. People would flock to anywhere my name was on the marquee in hopes of visiting the Umbra Citadel, seeing the ongoings of the town and its strange inhabitants. In time, the shadows would take on their own life, though I'd never tell my audiences such a thing. Characters would wander off to the edges of the screen and test the boundaries. Audiences thought it was peak surrealism and heaped praise on me. One character people gravitated towards was the Conjurer, a reclusive man hidden behind a thick coat and a layered pointy hat, occasionally seen casting shadows with his own hands.
How the hell do you do that? Shadows within shadows? This is avant-garde shadow puppetry. Such a thing. It's inconceivable.
My manager commented after a show a few months ago, enthralled and frightened by my abilities. What he thought were my abilities. Can't reveal my secrets now, can I? I chuckled, stretching my hands and feet, joints aching terribly now the adrenaline wore off. Arthritis was almost certain in my future.
You're killing me, Will. Come on, you made it this far. The Nexus wants to interview you and hear about how it's all done ahead of your television debut.
I could practically see the dollar signs in his eyes, but I knew his heart was in the right place, even if that place happened to be next to his wallet. All right, Jennings, all right. Tell their best journalist I'll fill them in when the date is set, okay? A tell-all interview. He grinned and practically jumped out of his shoes at the prospect, clapping and thanking me as he left. Someone else maneuvering past him to get through the doorway to my dresser. A tall, thin man in a beautiful red suit, bright silver blazer and bright smile. His satchel affixed to his side perfectly, a small bump pushing its way up from the inside as if something was writhing deep within its bowels. I knew immediately who it was. Eustace Decolter. I know your secret, Mr. Meyer. He offered out a gloved hand. I took it and we shook firmly, keeping my eyes on his, though they were obscured behind dark circular glasses. Your shadow has a mind of its own, and it is trying to get home. Well, Jung says the shadow is an id. Perhaps mine is simply the unconscious desires I possess that are desperately wanting to break free, huh? Go back to the place of my birth, just down the road and across the pond. I smirked, grabbing a drink and swirling it in my hand. Come on. Really? My shadow hasn't got a mind of its own. It's just me. Decolter's smile faded and his shoulders shook as if a cold shiver came over him. Being a cynic of the things you don't understand will not do you any favors. It will only bring ruin as it did for me. A shadow person may be attached to you, but it is like any living creature.
Push it far enough, poke and prod it unprovoked, and it will bite back. He cocked his head to the side, looked at something behind me, and the smirk returned. You fear it, don't you? This is why the lights are fixed the way they are. To trap it. To stop it gaining too much power. To stop it going home. What home are you referring to? The Umbra Citadel? That's a place I made up. I responded dryly. I felt uncomfortable. How was he this astute with just a handful of interactions with me? No, you didn't. That is a place you found. There is a difference. All shadows have their birth home, but few find their way back there. You're one of the few that can conjure it. That word. How did he... Talk to me, Mr. Meyer. Has anything felt off lately? I've seen some of your shows while warming up. They are fantastic, but they seem to be veering off course lately. Perhaps they are not what you envisioned. I felt unease, but it made no sense to hide information from him. Look, I don't know about any kind of shadow person or whatever, but I will admit that my shows have gotten out of hand. No pun intended. There are things going on in it that I'm not in full control of. Sometimes it feels like it's getting away from me. I know there are places in the Umbra Citadel that I haven't shown the crowd yet, that I don't want to show. I shook my head, downing my stiff drink. But that's just fatigue talking. Oh, I've been at this for 20 fucking years. I'm in control. If that ever changes, I'll be sure to call you. Thank you, Eustace, but I need to rest now. I stood up and gestured for him to leave. He shook his head and smirked, turning on his heel as he headed for the door. When you feel the chains binding him begin to crack, seek me. If they break, do not run another show. Good luck, Will. He bowed and exited, leaving me with a mixture of exhaustion and concern. As I turned my back to sit down, the light from the hallway caught my eye, and I saw my shadow, nestled up against the wall, watching me. As the summer solstice kicked in, it became harder and harder to find locations where either my skills weren't sought after or shadows didn't permeate every aspect of Sturgeon's structures. Even at night, mandatory media obligations filled with brightly lit locations meant I was not only dragging my shadow along with me, but subjecting parts of it to the torment of shadow puppetry. Twisting and pulling it until the core essence revealed itself and the Umbra Citadel would form. I'd figured out by this point that not only was I not in control of the complex shadow puppetry, but I was being inexorably pulled towards the Conjurer and their journey to the great gates deep within the bowels of the Umbra Citadel. My feet burned and veins popped as the last handful of shows I performed began to showcase the more forbidden areas of the city. Rituals the black seafaring sailors would undertake, the harvest under a black star, the daycare where everyone sleeps upside down. I hated it. I hated every moment of it. But the crowd became more rabid with every show, growing aggressive if I wasn't on stage for longer than an hour. It began to get ugly. I would rarely see the crowd from the bright lights and focusing on my art, but I'd hear mumblings from other acts that the crowd were pallid, unrecognizable, and feral. Then, one night after a particularly rowdy show, I got sloppy. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was an unconscious desire to have things just calm down for a while. But in the lead up to my tell-all interview, I stayed up late far too many times to perfect a new technique, falling asleep in front of my spotlight on the 5th night. When I woke up, there was no shadow. Not when my hands poked out, my feet, or my whole body. An absence of space where my companion once stood. Fuck. I darted for the door, grabbing my phone and my keys, checking my messages and finding Eustace's number. Instead, I found a post on the Nexus about a new impromptu art show by shadow artist William Meyer, tonight only. Oh no. Eustace's words came back, and the realization hit me with a wave of fear. If my shadow isn't here, where the fuck is it? I felt that concern as I ran for the Grand Hall, the sun setting and the shadows cast by every building, animal, car and object seemed to be reaching out to me. Whether to stop me or help me, I don't know. By the time I got to the hall, it was a sold-out show. The damn ticket officer wouldn't even acknowledge me. Back turned and staring at the floor, swaying from side to side in a rhythmic fashion, fixated on something unseen. I didn't have time to argue. I pushed past and ran through the back area to find Eustace. The sounds I heard as I passed by the general seating area were horrific, animalistic and manic. The sounds of things being torn, gurgling with a soft, almost pleading moan snuffed out with a dull thud. Closed mouth shrieks increasing in volume and agony as something wet is pulled free. Whooping, hollering, and incomprehensible noises that I tried my absolute best to block out, but left me shaking to my very core and grateful I didn't see them. I never wanted to find out what matched those fucking noises. Finding the decollete dresser, I found Eustace unconscious on the floor, satchel gone, and head bleeding. Eustace! I can't do this without you, man, come on! I turned him over and gave him some gentle slaps, thankfully, rousing him from unconsciousness. A grim look appeared on his face. You did a show. You let it loose. The conjurer you spoke of opened up the gates. I felt a lump in my throat, the noises outside weighing down on me with every passing second. What do I do? I asked, knees buckling with nerves. I want to make this right, to fix this. Eustace shook his head, getting to his feet. Your shadow was called back to the Umbra Citadel. It has left you forever. Vulnerable. He walked to the door and set off for the hallway. I followed behind him, still determined to fix my error. Vulnerable? Why? Eustace, please, tell me we can fix this. I pulled on his shoulder, but he brushed me off, walking silently down the hall until we got to the stage door. You're vulnerable because without a shadow, without your shadow, your soul is up for grabs. No barrier, no protector. Anything sees you as fair game now, William. Anything. He shook his head and turned round, taking off the glasses and showcasing a scar running the length of one eye, a grey pupil staring back at me. You can't fix everything. You have to own your mistakes. Get a new shadow, William. Ask for one or steal one if you have to. But your journey stops here. He opened the door, and we stepped out onto the stage, the screen no longer running and not a soul in the audience. The smell of iron mixed with a miasma of foul odors hitting my nostrils and bringing me to my knees. As my perspective shifted, I saw what lay in every seat of the audience area. Shadows. An entire hall full of them silently sat there, watching. Eustace flipped the light switch, and they were gone in an instant. He mentioned something about trying to proclaim the lost people eventually, but that it would take time. Said he had a tournament to appear in first. As for me, I kept a low profile and refused any and all interviews. Told them I was sick and mentally exhausted, unwilling to answer any scrutinizing questions or condemnations of what happened to these people. To my horror, that was not why most were inquiring. Instead, they were eager, almost too eager for another show, demanding in no small terms that I run it again and open the doors to the Umbra Citadel, stating that every night their shadow stood over them and demanded it silently. Some, however, asked in an almost mocking tone, "Where is your shadow now? Do you feel safe?" I hear odd noises outside during the waning hours. Things call to me in an almost singing tone to come outside. They don't say it, but I know that's what they mean. Every food delivery I get is handled with minimal physical contact. I tell the driver to leave the food on the doorstep, and I snatch it when they're gone. Last week, I caught him watching me from the bushes. He stood up slowly as he spotted me, his shoulders hunching over and something pushing up through his uniform. I slammed the door before I saw any more and switched food companies. Maybe they're not everywhere. I've given up on sleeping for so long. Now I just dream of the Umbra Citadel. In shadow, I walk along the cobbled streets into the lair of the Conjurer. He asks me questions without speaking, talks about the lost shadows. He pleads for me to come home. I need to get back. I need to go there. I need to be able to sleep at night. I'm begging someone, anyone out there listening through Dusklight Radio, to tell me they too lost track of their shadow. That I'm not the only one who is feeling this suffocating sense of paranoia. This unquenchable desire to find a shadow shaped like a door and leap into it. To find a way to this citadel. To make this right. Or, better yet, for someone to pop up who found their shadow again. To find it standing behind them dutifully and mimicking their every move. Just like normal. Because, in the fleeting moments when I'm asleep, when my guard is down and the lights hit the wall just right, an unfamiliar shadow stands over my bed. It cranes its neck to loom over and stare directly at me. If it had a mouth, I swear it would scream. It is not my shadow. It's not anyone's shadow. It is letting me know that it is there. It is waiting. And it is hungry.
Prologue. The Williams family was quoted by the Sturgeon Nexus as being reclusive, eccentric, and unbelievably powerful in all they do. Perhaps misunderstood, definitely kept at arm's length. And it's hard to disagree with that statement. Every city has a powerfully rich and odd group sitting at the head of the table, usually vilified for their opulence and complete disconnect from the common man. While the Williams family was once seen in a more positive light, the adventurers, socialites, and tragic artists of their time, it had now faded, and what was left in its place was discontent. The day I was born, the paper reported that I made no sound as I entered the world, instead simply grasping for the card produced at the time of my birth. A card representing great change, the end of things, and the start of a new cycle. The world. My name is Elizabeth Sema Persephone Williams. And I am the girl who broke the cycle. Chapter 1. The Family Tradition. Tortoises are remarkable creatures. They largely outlive most humans 4 times over, never get stressed, and live their lives in a slow, methodical, and chilled manner. I think a lot of us in today's age aspire to be like that, even if it's not in our nature to be so. But with every species, there's an anomaly of sorts. One that breaks the mold and is able to do something nobody else can do. For us, that's Malachi. Malachi has been in our family since the late 1800s. He was discovered by my great-grandfather, Dr. Archibald Williams, a noted herpetologist still scouting out the New World during the Age of Exploration. He was brought back home courtesy of the British East India Trading Company in 1892, and he's been with us ever since, passed down through the family as a form of inheritance. To be more specific, Malachi is a Seychelles giant tortoise, a species that, until recently, was thought to be extinct. Some of you may have even heard of Jonathan, currently the oldest tortoise, at a staggering age of 188. Well, Malachi came from the same territory and time period, albeit with a far more unusual property about him. When his egg was found, Archibald wrote in his journal,
"The damn thing was black from head to toe, a few white spots punctuating around the base and cracks forming around the top, indicating it was due to hatch."
He had several photos of him standing dignified and proud with the little hatchling, an unremarkable baby tortoise, save for some strange pigmentation on the shell and a propensity to bob his head when he saw Archibald. It was a few months later that Archibald discovered the thing that made Malachi special, and ultimately, the focal point of my story. Malachi would sometimes retract into his shell for several hours and come out producing something in his mouth. It was a small card with remarkable detail on it, not unlike a tarot card.
"It's remarkable. The first time I saw such a thing, I assumed my assistant was playing a practical joke at my expense,"
Archibald wrote in his journal.
"The juvenile had produced 3 cards over the course of several months. It would be some time until I knew this was to reflect my 2 young children at home, one of which was born while I was away. The first of these cards was not dissimilar to that of the Emperor. The latter, too, were similar to the Hanged Man and the High Priestess, so I'm told. A colleague of mine, whom was married to a gypsy, provided excellent insight into the meanings of such things. I am a man of science, but I must admit that there is an alluring charm to the supernatural that every man is curious by. This remarkable creature from a strange land producing such feats is but the tip of the iceberg."
He would continue to write about Malachi and his exploits as he got older, observing his diet. He has a particular enjoyment of sourdough bread and cinnamon buns, his docile behavior, and his breeding habits. When a new family member was born, a new card would pop up and he would catalog it, amassing a total of 15 by the time his journal concluded in his later years. Coincidentally, one for every member of his growing family.
"Every time we pop a new Williams out, he brings us a new card. It's like clockwork. I've given up trying to understand what each one means. I'm sure it'll become obvious to the bearer in due course. But it truly does feel like Malachi is part of our family. A watcher for every successive generation,"
he commented. It was obvious the admiration my great-grandfather had for Malachi. After all, he'd put so much of his life's work into finding him.
"I feel as if Malachi is merely doing what is in his understanding to be his nature as a terrestrial being who would outlive us all. He's cataloging us,"
Archibald remarked on one of his final entries in 1943.
"He seems to know when a new member of the Williams family is born and chooses our fates there and then. In a way, I'm humbled. His card for me was the Emperor, the one who was a master of his craft. To him, at such a juvenile age, I must have appeared to be the ruler. But as I reached the end, I think he senses he will outlive us all, and is curious which one of us will help him realize his potential.
When Archibald passed, Malachi refused to eat for some time, pacing the grounds of our estate and looking up into the window that Archibald's study resided. If I didn't know any better, I'd have said he was heartbroken. He didn't seem to attach to anyone else that strongly, until I came along. My grandfather Percival inherited him, and was represented by the card of the Hanged Man. He would try to follow in his father's footsteps, but the grief of World War II and the suffering he endured as an active serviceman would eventually lead him to taking his life at the relatively young age of 38 in 1965. Then Malachi was passed to his elder sister, my Auntie Minerva, who was represented by the Tower. She was a kind woman who sought to ensure that Malachi was well looked after during her time overseeing him. She was sadly killed when Flight 548 crashed over a field in 1972. And so it went over the decades, passed from member to member. There was a cousin who died during a parkour stunt, partially decapitating themselves in the process, and having the apropos card, the Fool. An auntie run down by an 18-wheeler who bore the card suggesting the Wheel of Fortune. And even one of my only close uncles, disappearing into thin air on his 44th birthday a few years ago. He possessed the card suggesting the Magician. You can see where this is going. For every card from the major arcana produced, it had a profound effect on that owner's life and, in a handful of cases, death. We kept it a secret and knew the outside world wouldn't understand. Great-grandfather Archibald's estate was inherited, and my ancestors each had a lump sum to keep them going, so we were free to do as we pleased. Years passed. Malachi grew older and reached maturity, eventually weighing a whopping 625 pounds as a fully grown adult, but remaining the gentlest giant you'll ever meet. When I was born in 2003, he would not leave my side if he could help it, watching over me carefully and trying, in his own way, to soothe me when I cried at night. I have so many photos of him and I as I grew up. Me feeding him his lunch, holding onto his shell for a hug, and even once riding him as his neck was craned up to look at me. I guess, in my own way, he was a best friend. I didn't realize that my family was dysfunctional until that realization of a tortoise being my best friend truly kicked in. That, and my father's insistence that I never socialized with other kids, stayed on the estate grounds and never bothered him when he was working. Which was always. He was known for having a short fuse, and if he saw red, it wasn't pleasant. Appropriately, his card was the devil. He used to be a much happier man, pranking the elder residents of our family and gaining a reputation for being something as a hedonist as a youth. When he met my mother and she fell pregnant on the first date, that lifestyle came to a screeching halt, and he eternally resented it. He also made no secret that he wanted a son, saying, if your mother wasn't an abject failure, you'd have gotten the successful chromosome. Instead, you're just a whore in waiting. My mother drank heavily, and spent her days reminiscing over how she was once a somebody and that, despite what people said, was most certainly not over the hill. When she married into the family, Malachi produced an upside-down card for the Star. Mom had been nothing remarkably popular, but she was a respected opera singer during her time before unexpectedly falling pregnant with me. She once slurred in a drunken tirade. I remember crying with Malachi that night. I was only 10, and I couldn't for the life of me understand why my mother was so callous, or why she cried when she saw my father out in the work shed until the late hours, always coming back in smelling of sulfur, with a malicious glint in his eye. I try not to think about those nights. When my 18th birthday came along last week, there was no fanfare or party with friends. Just a paltry cake my mother ordered off of a website and a simple card, neither side of my family bothering to attend. I'd say it surprised me, but that would be a bold-faced lie. My cousins were all married and living away from the family home. Grandparents had, of course, passed on, and as I mentioned previously, the one uncle I did have connections with disappeared 3 years ago. So it was just me. In their absence, they left a note advising me Malachi was now under my care and that they were going off on a trip, and that they didn't know when they were returning. I'd had an accident where I fell down the stairs a couple of weeks prior and fractured my leg, so I wasn't able to do too much. But thankfully, Malachi wasn't hard to care for, and he made the isolation that much easier. It was around this time that Malachi was showing his age. He'd gone blind in one eye, and was bumping into things as his depth perception began to fail him. I'd always make sure to stand in front and wear a perfume that he could easily detect. Tortoises have remarkable senses of smell, and he would grow to associate that perfume with me, bobbing his head slowly when he knew I was near. It was late, and I'd gone to go and feed him. I'd allocated his den to inside the house so I'd feel less alone, and when I turned on the lights, I noticed him shaking. His great feet looked like they'd topple over at any moment, and his head was inside his shell. "Hey, big guy, it's okay. I'm here." I sat next to him and rubbed his shell, soothing him until the shake stopped. When he popped his head out, a pair of cards were clutched in his jaw. Cards that were most certainly not a part of the major arcana, or any arcana set for that matter. The first showed a large storm, thick black clouds punctuated by white flashes, and a pair of furious eyes emblazoned in the background, as if surveying the ensuing chaos with absolute malice. Lightning bolts jutted out, and small, sharp hands protruded from the clouds, spindly arms leering down to grab at anything they could find as buildings below caught on fire, people screaming as rain hit their skin and melted their bones, babies being carried into the sky as mothers wept. Number 72, Pestilence, was written across the bottom in the same font and style my family had come to know. I looked it over. The detail made me feel uncomfortable and faint as Malachi lowered his head, seemingly exhausted. I placed it on the side and looked at the other one as I heard a rumbling overhead. The second depicted the sun and the moon on either side of a red sky, both with realistic faces locked in an expression of absolute rage as their mouths opened wide to scream. From the sun came a band of angels, trumpets attached to their mouths like proboscis, and huge, bulging eyes mapped all over their bodies. The moon billowed forth great creatures not dissimilar to spiders with wings, huge mouths on their underbellies as they bore fangs and raced toward their opponents. Beneath this war were the onlookers, some with their arms raised to the sky in joy, and others fleeing for their lives as a couple of stragglers were picked off by the creatures. One was pierced through the skull by an angel, their face ecstatic as their essence was mid-consumption. Another was being carried off and wrapped by the winged spiders. It was a scene of absolute carnage frozen in time, the title reading, Number 67, The Quell. "What in the—" I began, a flash of lightning and the thunder after jumping me out of my skin. I looked outside to see a storm from the distance, the sort where forked lightning was raging across the sky and rain was smashing the fields below. We lived on an estate that only had a few homes nearby, most of which were farmers. I could see the livestock and some of the field workers tending to the crops, rushing for shelter as the storm inched closer, a stray bolt nearly hitting a worker as he ducked for cover. What I saw next had me shut the curtains and curl up next to Malachi, thankful I deadbolted our main doors and that I wasn't alone, but utterly afraid for what was going to happen next. A bolt of lightning had lit up the sky as Malachi began to hide in his shell, and for just a moment I saw a pair of large eyes beam back at me, the size, structure, and even the pupils absolutely inhuman in nature. The clouds were undulating as they gained speed, small tendrils descending from the sky and rushing down to grab the livestock below, one of them even going into the windows of a neighboring house and pulling a screaming child out with great force. The mother, Mrs. Carter, screaming at the top of her lungs as this poor boy was dragged into the sky and past the clouds. I swear to God, for a moment, when the lightning flashed once again, I saw a smile ripple across the black sky. It crept closer, and I shut the curtains, nausea building in my stomach as I realized I could do nothing. Our family was used to keeping secrets, and I assumed my family didn't want to be around for when this one came to pass. As I sat there, staring at the 2 tarot cards Malachi produced, his body retracted into a shell and the feeling of unease mounting, a horrific realization came over me. If the first came to pass, there was still another one to go, and Malachi was producing more.
Any person possessing a slither of a conscience should feel a responsibility for those around them, even those we only come into contact with for a short period of time. Within those fleeting moments, we behoove responsibility for their well-being and our own. This is a building block of society, and one that I, Phineas A. Gerhardt, take extremely seriously. Which is why I must confess to the horrific negligence I have undertaken this past month, and the punishment I am likely to face in the coming hours. I am, by all accounts, dead already. I long held a fascination with death. In fact, I seldom recall a time I did not find myself ostensibly connected to its decaying and spindly arms. In my near 30 years of consciousness, I not once felt I was truly among the living, and, in fact, concluded early on this was simply a sort of limbo for my soul to reside within. Perhaps that is how I became the gravedigger for my village, a small but well-connected group of bodies that congregated, proliferated, and eventually ascended to whatever lays beyond the veil. I found the work deeply gratifying and felt not only that I was best equipped to undertake it, but that those crops left behind wanted me to be the one to tend to them, to prepare them for the coffin, and to help them see what I saw. Families would often remark on my disheveled state, my tattered and foul-smelling attire that evoked the scent of death, my unkempt hair and skin that seemed too worn, chapped and wrinkled for a man of my youth. But they quickly saw past such oddities and thanked me for the great care with which I tended to their loved ones. Of course, if the issues within started and ended with my unusual habits, we wouldn't be here. No, the truth is far harder to comprehend for those who shy away from death's loving embrace. For I am able to commune with its wants and needs during the waning hours when the moon is obscured and the eyes of God himself are blinded by its brilliant luminescence. When a body is laid to rest in my commune for the dead, I bring it into the mausoleum of the family name, lost to time for preparation. There I lay with it and allow my unconscious mind to reach out for the specter in the realms that lay between. My still-living, dullard family that lived atop the hill in a building steeped in opulence did not care for such practices, calling them uncouth, barbaric, and downright insidious. But when one is so blinded by their own avarice and disconnected from the spiritual, it's unsurprising they would deign to call the most pure connection of life and death an act of, quote, demonic institutionalization. I did not recall the first time I communed with the creature in between this world and the next, but they did not frighten me on first contact. Perhaps because, despite their odd structure, their frame was hidden behind a thick veil. Their body was not built for conversing. The jaw struggling to move and tongue straining to click in a manner my mind could understand. But we would come to an agreement. For as long as I slumbered in the abandoned sepulchre, I would be granted passage to the true realms when this body eventually failed me. Perhaps it was a sixth sense that allowed me to understand the risks involved in this unholy arrangement. But all beings starved long enough shall eventually turn on those they trust. I did not wish to find out what would happen to me if I faltered. In time, I became adept at traversing the dreamscape, eventually able to bring the souls of those who had died in my company to the specter for its own twisted desires. I did not dare to ask if it was for feasting, judgment, or an invitation for such things that were far beyond my understanding. I cared only about doing the work efficiently and properly. For a time, things were good. I felt purpose in every day's toil and adulation in every night's commune. My family desired for me to see a professional, to understand there was more to this world than living as a walking corpse, as they put it. But I brushed their concerns aside as the ramblings of the uninitiated and continued my work. Then the bodies stopped turning up. A mixture of longevity, job closures forcing a large swath of labor workers to migrate to the big cities such as Sturgeon, and low birth rates were major contributions to the decline of burials. And before I knew it, an agonizing 3 months had passed without a single one in Dondella. Communes with death each gradually transitioned from loving and familiar to unsettling, tense and without warmth. Each night, fear began to mount that they would take me if I continued to come up empty-handed. But, as if it were fate, a man showed up at my shack on the border of my commune. He obscured his face, his sallow skin peering out from beneath strips of fetid fabrics, marked by age and filth. His tall figure clad in a dark trench coat that I admit captivated me. In truth, I could not tell if they were man or woman, but the way they commanded a room struck an admiration within me. Perhaps I wished to see them as a better version of myself, and referred to them in the masculine as a result. They asked to be let in, and though I did not care for the living in great capacity, I felt compelled to open up, literally and figuratively, to this alluring individual. When I say that my home is a shack, I am not being facetious. It is derelict, rife with keepsakes from those I have laid to rest who part with them as offerings in anticipation of meeting death. I have no need for anything beyond the basics, no desire for company, and prefer to sleep in the mausoleum. But, on occasions such as this where there is no offering to give the waiting dead, I argue it is wise to stay away from their looming gaze. If the visitor had issues with my home, they did not let on as they took in the surroundings before being guided to a chair in my sitting room. The room felt like it was shaking as they sat down opposite me, the very air itself flickering and dancing.
"You are doing divine work here, Phineas,"
they remarked. Every syllable pushed past their lips was given the utmost attention and care, making my skin shudder with excitement.
"But it is clear you are lost in the fray and are in need of help. A true man out of time, it seems. Fortunately, that is why I am here, to put the pieces back together."
They extended a hand, thick and calloused with scars strewn across the palms like a battleground. Following the road map of their veins, I spied small chinks in the armor where vulnerabilities peered out. A slew of hesitation marks there, red pustules where hair had been torn out, signs of a battle raging within and without. All coming together to paint the picture of a person constantly at odds with the very skin they wore as my hands stretched to meet their own. When I gripped it, I felt an inexplicable energy radiate from them, and as their gaze met my own, I saw something shift in the corner of the room. "You are not alone, stranger." The words burned as they left my lips and my eyes skittered in my skull, desperate to avert themselves from the thing behind the stranger. It was long, spindly, hidden behind a veil. In that moment, it could be mistaken for a sibling of my own emissary to death. If the stranger was rocked by my revelations, They didn't show it as the handshake ended and the image left my sight.
The fact you can see it, too, shows me I have come to the right place. My name is Gale, and I find myself in need of your services.
They looked around my abode as they spoke, energy still radiating off of them. You have a body that needs tending to? Rites to be read before burial. I have plots available. I prepared to stand up and show them, but they held out a hand and, like an obedient dog, I sat down and kept quiet.
Your reputation as a purveyor of the pervasive precedes you, Phineas. Not many in this fair town don't know of the gravedigger, who not only communes with the dead, but believes he shepherds them to the maw of the beast itself. I'm told that you eschew normal living with the opulence that your family name brings, and instead dedicate yourself to this macabre behavior. Is this true?
My tongue lolled around in my cavity like a slug with salt on its back. My eyes stung from lack of blinking, and every pore of my skin bubbled with apprehension. Was this interloper about to cast me out? Was this my fate for not bringing fresh souls to my communes? Yes, it is. I assure you, I am under no flight of fancy or delusions of grandeur. I may be different to the masses congregating in the petri dish they call a town, but I am of sound body and mind. I simply serve and ensure my place when this flesh prison fails me. Is that so wrong? To want to live in a way that pleases the soul as much as the body? I stood with a start, perhaps the first time my heart had raced in as many months. A brief reminder that this body has its own drumbeat to march to, totally separate from my soul. It is petulant, and I expected the stranger to match my outburst. Instead, I saw a smile eke out from behind the fabrics covering their face, something sinister glimmering within it.
I take what you do with the utmost sincerity and admiration, Phineas. I do not wish to mock your practices, but rather help enhance them, in exchange for helping my mission.
They slowly rose from the table and turned away from me, unfurling some of the fabric around their face as they spoke.
I am not what I once was, disfigured by the heavens above for mistakes as a youth. Now I serve them in the hopes they will one day return me to the way I was. I must find those who have strayed from the path and either help them see the truth or send them to a higher judgment before this can befall them.
I dare not describe in this journal what I saw when the figure turned, only to remark that on this earth no such creature should exist or be allowed to walk with such turmoil present. Features displaced and some vacant. An artist with the most boorish mind, stooped in bizarre ideologies and assisted by herbs that opened the third eye, could not conjure such monstrosities. I somehow held my nerve, and instead looked away after a moment, allowing them to cover back up. I do not know if I can help you, I finally croaked, pushing back bile down my gullet. I prepared the bodies and carried the souls. I know not what happens to them after that. To meet a fate such as this.
Be not afraid, Phineas. I am simply trying to carry out the message of the Divine's will. Fortunately, you can help me with that. By bringing those I am tasked with seeking out, you can help me heal them and set their souls free. In return,
they walked over and handed me a small piece of parchment, faded at the edges and the crimson lettering still shimmering in the arc of the lamplight.
I will help you become even closer to your emissary. Closer to death itself.
If lightning were to have struck outside at that very moment, I would have considered it an omen of the things to come. Alas, the night was serene and cold when I gripped their hand and agreed to the terms, never asking why they needed someone like me in the first place. From that moment forward, all bodies brought to my garden were already encased in coffins made from obsidian mahogany, a thick seal around the sides, and iron chains looped around from top to bottom. Whatever was inside
Gale did not want it ever breaking free.
Acquiring them was challenging, but not impossible. Those who have strayed too far from the path and let the sickness consume them met a fate in life even worse than my own. They become demons incarnate. It takes all of my not inconsiderable skill to bind and subdue them. Now comes the hard part.
Gale pointed to the mausoleum, and a feeling of foreboding crept its way into me, nestling in the place that anticipation once resided.
We shall place the coffin in there. You will slumber alongside it and conduct your commune, cleansing it of sin and bury it in the waning hours before dawn. Should the grave remain filled come sunrise, we will have delivered their soul.
I am not a foolish man. Socially inept, perhaps, but never foolish. My instincts screamed foul, but one look from Gale's piercing eyes swayed me and assured me this was the right thing to do. After all, perhaps I was simply concerned over the prior lack of offerings. Yes, I thought, that must be it. Doing as instructed, we hauled the coffin into the mausoleum and propped it up against the far wall. The limestone screamed as the jagged edges of the coffin scraped against its skin. By the time our task was complete, the sun was beginning to set and Gale looked eager to take their leave. You're sure this is the right thing to do, Gale? What about their friends, their kin? Surely they want a chance to pay respects. I felt it was only right to ask. This was still my job, my lot in life. Gale gripped at their tender arms, hesitation marks still raw and seeping.
I assure you, no family will want to see them in their sorry state. To that end, I chained their coffins shut so as not to invite unnecessary curiosity. I will return in 3 days with another.
They turned on their heel and left for the gates, the gravel submitting to their proud steps before they halted in their tracks. And something shuddered underneath Gale's shoulder blades.
But a word of advice, Phineas. The night can play tricks on your mind. Demons can too. Ignore anything you may hear or see outside of your commune. I'd hate to have to bury you, too.
Something in those parting words pulled at my guts and dropped them through the floor. Struck by a fear I had not experienced since I first properly communed with the visage that hung in the spaces in between. I did not want to cross this stranger. The night came and brought with it a renewed sense of foreboding. The once inviting mausoleum, where I joyfully prepared the bodies of the recently deceased and peacefully slept beside them, now felt akin to the open mouth of a malevolent beast ready to bite down the moment I showed my weakness. Was this how others felt around the domiciles of the dead? I sat in the crypt facing the coffin, attempting to make sense of the etchings scratched across its surface and the sigil in its center. They bore no resemblance to the language I spoke, or of those held within the books my parents encouraged me to read as an adolescent. In time, my mind drifted to halcyon days up on the hill, living in the manor house with my siblings and shying away from their boisterous activities, instead opting to peruse every ancient novel my father's library had within it. Even my vernacular, though outdated by modern standards, derived from those tomes I held as close to my heart as if it were a dear friend known since birth. Being accosted by my peers and mocked by relatives meant little to me if I was able to lose myself in the worlds they held within. I paused my musing as a faint scratching could be heard echoing around the small burial chamber. It was rhythmic, constant, and incessant. My ears strained to pick up the source, and eyes inevitably fell on the coffin. The words of Gale hung in the air as a tangible threat greater than anything I had experienced. Before long, I saw a large rat race past my feet and into a small crack on the far corner.
calming my nerves and allowing me to regress to the realms of childhood, a far more applicable location than this, with several hours still to go before my commune. It was during one particularly raucous evening that my connection to death truly began. My younger siblings, twins, were caught in Father's study by our elder brother Cochrane. He insisted he saw one of them making the other float as they, quote, cast aside their old identity in favor of one beguiled by the nameless one, end quote, before dropping their twin to the ground in a heap and suffering a seizure. I was engrossed in a book, as always, but even I felt the need to check on the situation and ensure all was well. Hushed voices spoke about the twins. What would befall the nameless one and that of their sister Lucinda? Would she forgive her sibling? Could any of the family forgive such a creature? Mother fretted and father dithered. Both then drank to assuage the guilt of raising children that largely failed to meet their exorbitant expectations. For a time, things were swept under the rug. Lucinda would suffer only bumps and scrapes, but her sibling would comment every night on something visiting them in their dreams. We didn't dare to use their new identity around them, lest we invoked the monstrosity within. Neither even now on paper do I risk it. But there was an abject sadness in their face when we failed to recognize what they'd become, as if they were proud of such a thing. Nevertheless, we inquired and ascertained that whatever they perceived was visiting them was simply doing so in their dreams. Cochrane was of an age where directness and bluntness were all he knew, and so he took to labeling our sibling as a freak, communing with demons. Regrettably, as the night terrors persisted, Father actually listened. I kept silent about my own nightly visits from the entity behind the veil, and Lucinda refused to elaborate when her twin pressed her to just tell them you saw it too. And whatever we as a family knew was going on was instead chalked up to one thing: them. I still recall the night they were taken. Under the cover and shame of a twilight sun did the emissaries come, cloaked and hidden to ensure no revenge could be enacted. They assured Father and Mother that they would take care of the issue. They'd be safe and would one day return as the child they once knew. They kicked and screamed until a cloth was placed under their face and their fragile body fell limp. They were barely 15 years old and looked like a child in the arms of these gargantuan beasts draped in fine clothes. In that moment, as I peered up from my book, I saw that very same visage of death I'd come to know in my dreams, with arms wrapped around both individuals and peering down at our sibling. I said nothing as they were taken away, never to be seen again. I would come to find they'd gone missing from the main building soon after arriving, and a search party was underway. Mother fell into a deep depression, and Father denied any wrongdoing. Cochrane slinked off to the family retreat, and Lucinda, well, she was never the same. A broken family before, and an irrevocably shattered one after. We were never meant to be together, and my life's work ensured I had a path to follow that detracted from theirs, even if my father would forever remain irascible over the entire affair. My melancholy stops here, for a time, when something stirs me from my sonder, and my neck snaps to attention so quick that I damn near give myself whiplash. Someone is knocking on the coffin. A soft rapping that comes from weakened knuckles, but unmistakably there. I freeze like a rodent caught in the still widening eyes of a cat ready to pounce, waiting for the knock once more. I lean in closer to the fine wood and listen for breathing, words, or any kind of communication. Regardless of Gale's request, I cannot ignore someone's pleas for help. I am a gravedigger, not a murderer. As my ear is a few inches away, the chains rattle against the wall of the coffin as something horrifying bleats out from within. Guttural shrieks and inhuman howls of pain emanate from its structure, the boom rattling around the contours of the inscrutable tomb and creating a cacophony of suffering that threatened to burst my eardrums under the weight of its agony. Only as I am brought to my knees do I see the true source of the noises. It is shambling, shuffling in place as if standing on tired legs and bearing the weight on one to the other to ease the burden, swaying softly like a praying mantis ready to strike. Small, perhaps 4 feet tall, a bulbous head with a skull that stretches up like a spire. The light flickers as features come into place and immediately resign their positions from my view. Hollow sockets too deep to bear eyes, teeth as black as the coffin's obsidian material that jut out from where canines once resided. Large nostrils attached to a small bridged nose. The skin is a bubbling, peeling mess, allowing blue and pink flesh underneath to peek out. It was a monstrosity beyond what I can accurately convey, and it hobbled towards me, within striking distance after just a few steps. I was paralyzed to the spot, unable to fight back or flee, begging my lord's retinue to sweep in and save me from oblivion.
Stay back! If you still have intelligence, then know I am not your enemy. I do not bring you harm.
I shrieked, staring down this beast as it stood still at the shout of my voice, perhaps itself shocked by my actions. We stood in tenuous silence for a few moments before the heavy thudding of the coffin broke my stare, and I instinctively turned on my heel to stare at it. Immediately realizing the grave mistake I'd made, I turned back, expecting the brute to be at my throat. But instead, I was met with a sight that shook my soul to its very core. Lucinda, floating in the air as the walls of the crypt crumbled away, like the fragility of time itself, and gave way to a landscape I'd become all too familiar with over the years, my nightly communes with death. Her eyes were rolled back in her head, and her neck bent at an angle so fierce her vertebra poked up through the skin like a weed, threatening to pierce the soft flesh that kept it contained. Her palms were outstretched and covered in blood stemming from long slashes on her forearms, legs twitching beneath the knees as toes curled over. "Sister?" I choked on the words and the sentimentality I'd long cast aside, but to see someone I loved in this manner, it is enough to distill the bile in the hearts of any man and allow blood to pump anew. She did not speak before her body was pulled into the veil that enshrouded my lord, her expression of grim acceptance never wavering in spite of her broken body. Instead, she opted to send a message with actions over words. With arms moving like that of a stiff wooden doll, her index digit outstretched behind me to a burning house on the hill. Our house. I awoke with a start in the cavernous cold of the crypt, knees buckling under the ache. The first thing my eyes met was the unforgiving structure of the coffin, dutifully propped up opposite me. My first thought upon waking was one that carried with me until I saw Gale once more. "Who was in the coffin?" Gale looked at me for a moment before shaking their head and chuckling.
"I take it they showed you something you didn't like, Phineas,"
they remarked with nary a moment's hesitation, as if expecting my rattled demeanor. I nodded and they sighed.
"I suppose that's to be expected. Did they meet your emissary, at least?"
Again, I nodded, opening my lips to ask the same question before Gale held up a heavily bandaged hand.
"They were nobody, an unfortunate victim caught up in something bigger than themselves. They sought amnesty for their sickness and instead invited in something insidious. All you must know is they are now at peace. Now,"
Gale pointed to another coffin they'd brought.
"I trust you can do this again."
What choice did I have? Like a docile servant, I nodded and Gale patted my shoulder before leaving with the same promise of return in 3 nights. Telephoning the home yielded nothing, and our butler simply told me the family were fine and on a sabbatical of which they would call once they were home, before promptly putting the phone down. Perhaps it is in my nature to be distrusting, but I could sense his taciturn behavior even after a lengthy absence from conversing with one another. Something was wrong. I won't waste valued pages repeating the same events as before, for they were largely unchanged, save for the intensity with which they occurred. Though I will note 2 distinctive differences were within the final moments of my commune with that second coffin. As the malformed monstrosity made itself known, it crawled towards me from the top corner of the crypt, dragging the torso of something viscous and foul-smelling trailed behind them. Milky white eyes bleached by chemicals bore into my soul as a jagged and yellow tongue lolled out of their distended jaw. I did not cower this time, instead backing towards the coffin and remaining patient that soon the commune would take me away. As my back hit the coffin, something squealed within and pounded vigorously for release while a wet substance dripped onto my shoulder. Looking up, I saw where the other half of this creature has been hiding. Another face, far fouler than the first, smiled at me with a lipless hole filled with rotten teeth before leaping towards me. Shrieking and turning away, I again was greeted with the sight of a sibling floating in front of me. Cochrane, his skin stripped from his body and leaving a red paste in his wake. It did not take a medical mind to see he was fraught with damage. Muscles still moving, sinews stretched and tendons squeezing as the twisted structure that was once my brother spoke to me before the veil enraptured him and my lord chaperoned him away. Come home, Phineas. I did not dare to speak of this to Gale, nor on the 3rd and 4th occasion when a visage of my parents appeared, both clad with the scars of torture and guilt. Gale had changed, becoming a person whose presence I began to meet with dread, scorn, and disgust. Each time I met them, their body grew more decayed, fetid, and rotted. I would spot various packets of filth adorning their clothing. Mud, fungal, and fecal matter from the streets was practically growing on their body. If they were aware of the detritus, they took no notice as they sauntered into my home on the final occasion, now a swagger in their step. It was only after multiple sleepless nights and a rapidly diminishing sanity that fear gave way to frantic anger and a desire to see an end to this.
Gale, I barely sleep anymore. My dreams are filled with visions of my home burning, despite repeated assurances to the contrary. I have seen things that will haunt my soul long after it departs this body for new pastures. You will not tell me anything of the coffin's contents, and I am no closer to my lord than I was when we started. Do not think me ungrateful for the offerings, but something feels wrong. The air in the room was thick, hot, and foul as my words reached a fever pitch. If you cannot tell me the nature of this arrangement at this late stage, I'll have no choice but to...
To what, Phineas? To tell the authorities, to tell the townsfolk. What would they do? You think they'd listen to the ramblings of a madman out of time? A man who, racked with such unimaginable guilt for his actions, regressed to the point of a hermit and communes with the dead.
Gale laughed, a hollow thing that reverberated from their belly.
You are so feared and vilified that they dare not come to you unless it is with their dead. You are a murderer, Phineas. None shall offer you aid.
I did not understand. My rage simply built and I became inconsolable.
I have done no such thing, Gale. I offered you assistance when you came here. I was courteous and kind in spite of my disdain for the living.
I slammed a fist on the table, signaling for them to leave. They stood up, but made no movement as their eyes gleamed from behind the fabric.
Do you know why you detest the living so, Phineas? Because the first thing you said after the fire was, "I wish I was dead with them." Cotard's syndrome, they call it. Though I think in your case, it's closer to survivor's guilt.
I felt the room spin as their voice began to feel distant, memories flooding my vision.
You said nothing the night your sibling was taken. Nor did you say anything when that fire was started in their bedroom, the one that consumed your home and your parents. You were always a casual observer of life's events, the definition of a wallflower stuck in a constant state of monocopsis. You are a fish out of water, watching everyone else swim comfortably well.
I fell to my knees and felt sickness overtake my body, turning my skin sallow as I struggled to breathe. The fire. I remembered the feeling of black smoke choking my lungs and sapping the life from me. The emissaries slowly pulling their veil apart as I resisted with all my might. No, I did not cause the fire. I am no murderer. I choked, barely holding back bile as Gale kneeled down in front of me.
Even if that were true, you most certainly are now, my friend. But all of that will go away by tomorrow, because you are going to complete one final job for me, and we will part ways as you requested. I will get what I want from the ritual, and you will get this.
I look at them and see a medallion with brilliant markings, a symbol of the Ouroboros snake at its center, and the light of a black sun shimmering down over it, burning its skin.
I will allow you to reach the state you desire most of all when communing with the dead. Your sins will dissipate, and you can finally be among the dead in the way you always wanted.
Gale stood up as they placed the medallion around my neck and walked to the door, where a white coffin, absent of chains with sigils I'd never seen before across its center, waited patiently. They did not look back as they stood in my archway, staring up at the setting sun with black clouds gathering. I will do this, but no more, Gale. My voice was hoarse, tired. They didn't seem to register as they responded.
Looks like a storm is coming, Phineas. Sometimes we don't even know what we want. It takes someone with a higher calling to figure it out for us. But the rain clears, and we harvest the crops. I shepherd them, just like I shepherded you.
They carried on walking, leaving me with the last of their coffins as I lowered it into the unforgiving hole in the earth's skin, staring at the creature I was putting into its arms with one overwhelming emotion surging through my normally numb, decaying, and despondent body. Regret. I chronicle this final entry after a night that I desperately wish to have been a figment of my imagination. A night that only existed in the worst nightmares possessed by those in the deepest circle of hell. That which is reserved for betrayers and ones who commit acts against their kin. But that is where I belong. Perhaps that is where I've always belonged, as Gale indicated in our last conversation. I did as instructed and kept watch over the coffin until the storm clouds gathered and I was forced into the mausoleum for shelter and to conduct my commune. But on this evening, the drizzle outside rapidly evolved into a deluge that, coupled with the heavens exploding, would keep me from a peaceful meeting with my lord. Instead, I would hear those same unholy sounds of retching, whooping, hollering, and shrieking emanating from the casket outside. Yet, something within their tonal cries was horrifyingly familiar and awoke within me the instincts to protect them from harm. Bearing my full weight against the crypt doors, I was decidedly unable to budge them with the sheer volume of waterlogged mud pushing up against it, even as the cries grew more tepid and panicked. Something shattered through the thick top of the casket, and the cries became all the more recognizable. I wish for this to be recorded in the annals of time for any who may investigate. I did not know who lay in that coffin before this moment. Had I done so, I would have sooner put Gale in a coffin of their own making than participated. For at that moment, the spell was broken, and the pieces began to fit together in my mind like that of a puzzle, showcasing the terrifying reality I had partaken in. Of course, I had heard rumblings of an individual that took despondent youths from their homes in the dead of night and sought to rebirth them, devouring them like the body of their martyr and absorbing their essence, their sins, if you will, mocking the authorities with talk of scripture and strange markings. Yet, the authorities never found those poor souls taken, and the bereaved families had no justice or peace. But they shall now. There were never any demons in those coffins, no evil to be purged or salvation given. They were people, young and vulnerable, as they were set upon by the hungry jaws of a predator and their foolish accomplice. I wish I could tell you that in certain plots within my cemetery, you would find the now sleeping bodies of those taken by the one the media dubbed the Antlion of Sturgeon. But it is my sad duty, to my great and everlasting disgust, to inform you of what I discovered upon exiting the sepulchre in the morning, staring at the garden of the dead in disarray. Each plot I had dug was unearthed, each coffin destroyed, and an unspeakable odor emanating from the pits. A thick layer of skin and chunks of torn flesh with distinctive bite marks trailing in its wake. Whatever they were now, they had shed their old form and experienced great suffering in their tribulations. Except for the latest grave, that which contains my greatest shame and ultimate sin, for which my Lord will punish me accordingly. During the night, the storm had become so fierce that it filled the grave to the brim with a murky soup of rainwater, dirt, and vegetation. But the front of the casket was still visible, as was what lay within it. A defiant fist had broken through the front, bloodied knuckles and torn skin frozen in time, bearing a ring that had been passed from my mother to my sibling before they were taken away so many years ago. A moment which set a chain of events in motion that would bring me here, bring my siblings to their own personal hells, and bring my parents into the blazing inferno that was once our home. I know this to be true despite my mental defiance to the contrary, and the imaginary assurances from our old butler. My sibling lay in that coffin, their fate these past few years unknown, but now ultimately ended at my feet. Gale was nowhere to be seen, but today's paper highlighted that something new had developed in the Antlion case. A gruesome new pair of murders, with a third victim being found alive. They had evolved and progressed, leaving me behind. I will commune with my Lord when the sun sets, and I will accept what occurs with full responsibility. Perhaps I will be granted the release from this earth that I have sought nearly all my life. Perhaps I'll find a way to atone for what happened to them. I still hear the soft splashing and scratching from outside the crypt, even now, but I know this to be a trick of an addled mind. The medallion Gale gave me softly hums around my neck, and my tired hands finally opened the parchment they had given me, finding now as good a time as any to peruse its contents. How ironic that Gale would anticipate my reading of this until it was too late.
Time to come home, Phineas. Do not be afraid. Gale.
The hour is late, And in addition to the soft splashing and scratching from the still open grave of my kin, I hear the voices of my parents at the entrance to the mausoleum begging me to open and join them, to come home. I slept for a few moments and saw my lord approaching me, their skeletal hands gripping the veil expectantly. I know I must not tell what I see, but the fright shall consume me long before I am able to articulate. This is my fate. I will now remain here with the rest of the dead, waiting for someone else to dig me a grave. I beg of you to ensure I cannot crawl out of it. The sun is setting on a rainy city street as commuters rush home for the evening. Most pass by without noticing the uniquely tall figure concealed in the shadows of a particularly dark alleyway. But those who do notice are quick to stop.
Hooray, 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 folks! Grab your drinks, take your seats, and get ready for a ride! Today we're visiting the big city of Rockland, Georgia, and there's a new circus in town. Cirque du Soleil has been performed in every country worldwide, yet I bet you've never heard of us. That's okay, because after tonight will be impossible to forget. Our acts may be changed, the quality always remains. Don't miss this, quite literally, once-in-a-lifetime performance. There's no acrobats or jugglers, no bearded ladies or magicians. You won't see a single lion, tiger, or bear. Oh my! I guarantee each sight will be one never beheld, and 100% authentic. But don't take my word for it. Come on in and have a seat!
Behind the figure is an old brick building, and, right on cue, its rusted metal door swings open with an ominous groan. Spectators turn up their collars against a sudden blast of cold wind as they make their way inside. There they file into the rows of theatre seats set before a grand stage. At its center, a tall green hat hovering atop two glowing disjointed eyes emerges from the darkness. A pair of white-gloved hands appear lower on either side as the hat erupts into dull green flames, just bright enough to illuminate a faint outline. A long, slender figure is seated in a high-backed chair, and a shining silver cane appears in its right hand as it rises. Though the flickering light allows short glimpses of a maroon velvet suit, the figure's face remains a blank void, creating a sinister air around his booming voice.
Hello, Rockland! Thank you for joining us on this dark and dreary evening. Now, this may seem like an unusual setting, but many of our performers simply can't be available during the day. In fact, no introduction can possibly prepare you for the sights to come. Our show is what you must experience to believe. And I should warn you, the front rows are a splash zone. Now, without further ado...
The ringmaster's green flame extinguishes, and the stage is left in total darkness until a teal light cascades across the floor. With it comes a drifting mist that separates and settles into the form of two young, translucent girls. The pair are identical down to their matching dresses and porcelain faces. Their dark hair is pulled back with thick headbands, and the teal lights ripple behind them like an ocean.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I present the Guidry twins, Ethel and Esther.
Born 1884 to a prominent family, at age 12 they set fire to their teacher's home. 3 years later, they murdered their parents and buried them in the basement. For a short time, they were able to run the household, but they could not excuse the Guidry's absence forever. The twins fled from the sheriff, but they could not outrun fate. Death came for them as it will come for you all. For the twins, it came in the form of 3 drunken rustlers merely happening by.
The transparent sisters dissipate back into a shapeless mist that spreads over the audience. 2 columns begin rising from the center, swirling together like a tornado. The glowing teal is pulled into the funnel and redispersed to create a new scene on stage. There is a brilliant forest lit with hundreds of fireflies and a small path cut through its center. The cyclone separates into multiple strands of mist that reform the twins, hand in hand, on center stage. They wave cheerfully as more mist collects behind them into 3 separate pools. Each one grows taller and darker until settling into the shape of giant, hulking men. Their eyes are black holes barely visible beneath the rims of their cowboy hats, and each brandishes a large knife. The young girls seem ignorant of their presence as the men raise their weapons high above the sisters' heads. Without warning, they strike as one, and an explosion of red spills over the audience before it all fades into darkness. After a suspenseful pause, the forest reappears. Only now the bright teal is stained with a deep crimson tarnishing its former glow. The murderers sit gathered around a small fire, laughing and drinking. Behind them, Esther and Ethel's spirits take shape. Their bodies stretch upwards until their height towers over the 3 men. And then they pounce. This time the darkness is immediate but lasts only an instant before the scene returns in flashes. The twins' faces are contorted into monstrous expressions, and their pointed nails tear into their prey. The men's screams ring through the auditorium and flash. One man lies lifeless, separate from his arms. Another is beneath Esther, his stomach torn open, intestines raised like a trophy. The last is dangling from Ethel's grasp, her hands wrapped around his throat, pulling until his head separates from his spine and a red mist sprays across the stage. His body is dropped with a thud, and then flash. The bodies now lie in a burning pile, their flesh melting as the twins dance around the flames. Now it is their turn to laugh and sing. Then darkness.
Their revenge was had.
Oh, but still, they could not rest. Aimlessly they wandered for 20 long years before finding a home without truth. And tonight, you'll see firsthand just what a couple of vengeful spirits can really do. But first, we'll need a volunteer.
The stage floor is relit with soft teal lights, and the twins once again stand together in the center. A spotlight appears over the crowd, revealing dozens of eager hands. Slowly, the circle shrinks to a single hand near the back row.
And we have a winner! Jonah Davis! Come on down, good sir, come on down! Let's give him a hand, folks!
A well-dressed middle-aged man with curly brown hair and thick-rimmed glasses proceeds to the front, cheering and high-fiving those he passes along the way. Nearing the final few feet, he raises both fists in a celebratory pump before leaping onto the stage. The twins guide him to the center and stand on either side.
Mr. Davis is married to a dental hygienist, has 2 daughters, and enjoys spending time outdoors. At first glance, you might think he's an accountant or an office manager. But Jonah is actually a drug dealer. A successful one. In fact, these very streets are where his enterprise began. Isn't that right, Jonah?
Jonah nods with an approving smile and gives 2 big thumbs up, but his eyes shift nervously over the audience.
Yes, give it up for Mr. Davis! He's about to assist the Guidry twins with a most important ritual, one that is very vital to their existence. Prepare to be amazed!
Another flash and the twins are facing Jonah, mist streaming from their outstretched arms. It envelops Mr. Davis, wrapping him slowly into a cocoon until only his face is exposed. His glasses fall to the floor. Beads of sweat dot his forehead, but still, he's smiling. Then, so gently, he is lifted into the air and turned onto his back. The captivated audience stares at the horizontal bulge with keen anticipation, and then it starts to compress. It is almost imperceptible at first, but the cocoon is becoming, ever so slightly, flatter by the second. Soon, Jonah can be heard struggling for air. Each breath grows more shallow until there is only wheezing, choking, and abrupt silence. Soon there is only a stream of mist flowing between the sisters as the forest and the fireflies return in all their former brilliance. Esther and Ethel glow with radiance and new life as they float serenely to center stage. There they take a final bow before they and the scenery disappear entirely. In their place, a green flame emerges, and the ringmaster returns.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was the Kidri twins!
The ringmaster crosses the stage with an inhumanly long stride and tips his hat to the audience. His eyes gleam as if he is hiding a smirk beneath his facial void.
And that was only the beginning. Our next performers are more of a group effort, if you will. But first, we're going to need another volunteer.
The spotlight reappears over the audience to show nearly every member waving, eager to be chosen. It spans erratically over the crowd as it shrinks until a shaggy-haired young man is singled out. Christopher Scruggs waves victoriously and heads for the stage. The crowd is rendered invisible behind a veil of darkness once he is standing with the ringmaster. Never has he felt so alone. But still, he is smiling, and still, the crowd is cheering.
Everyone, welcome our next guest. Chris just turned 18 last month. He's in his senior year at Rockland High, their star picture, in fact. And he has already attained several prominent scholarship offers. Ooh. His other talents include rock climbing, beer pong, and Call of Duty. It's this last skill that makes him especially qualified for our next performance.
A small portion of the audience has been made visible in the spotlight's glare. They are cheering, but some are also twitching. One woman's head does a quick jerk to the side. Another man's foot shoots forward. For some, it is only an eye or a finger. But still, they continue to clap.
My good people, this is how to survive a zombie apocalypse. That's right. We not only provide entertainment, but education as well. And tell me, is there any better teacher than a live demonstration?
The spotlight appears over stage left to reveal a zombie cheerleader. A large piece of missing skull leaves its brain exposed, while random strands of dark hair hang from its remaining scalp. One eye slightly protrudes from its socket, and one arm has been torn off at the shoulder.
Lesson 1, Zombie Basics. As you're all likely aware, there are many techniques one may utilize to end these creatures. But the key to success is in the total destruction of the brain. Yes, fire is one strategy, but no, we will not be setting fire to my stage. At least not during this performance. Instead, we will begin with firearms.
A simple revolver appears in the ringmaster's outstretched hand.
Here you are, my boy. All you need to do is kill the zombie before it kills you. Surely this will be child's play for someone with your skills. Now, show him how it's done.
The spotlights shine on Christopher and the zombie. Everything else is plunged back into darkness while the zombie stumbles forward. Christopher stands with the weapon raised. There is a joyous expression on his face that fails to meet his eyes, while his hands shake with excitement. Or perhaps it's terror. 6 feet remain between them when Christopher fires his first shot wide, and the bullet whizzes backstage. 4 feet to go, and the second shot slams into the zombie's chest. It is knocked back a step, but otherwise unfazed. At 2 feet, the third shot finds its mark, and an explosion of organic matter is sprayed onto the stage in front row.
Well done, my boy! Well done!
Christopher's whole body is now shaking, but his smile remains intact. The ringmaster places one hand on the boy's shoulder and retrieves the gun with his other. The moment they make contact, Christopher becomes as steady as a board.
Now, on to lesson 2. Slashing and bashing. It's important to note that not all zombies will be slow and clumsy, nor will you always have a firearm at your disposal. Sometimes you may be left with little more than a bat or a machete. But fear not, for these weapons can be every bit as effective. All right, Mr. Scruggs, time to choose your weapon. Which will it be?
A large bat appears in one of the ringmaster's hands and a machete in the other. Christopher extends his own hand but pauses halfway. Still, he smiles, but his hair is slick with sweat and wet circles peek out from beneath his arms. He turns briefly to the crowd, half are shouting for the machete and half for the bat. There is an audible gulp before Christopher finally chooses the machete.
A wise choice indeed. Now we will release the zombie. The rules are the same as before. Just kill it before it kills you.
The second spotlight appears back over stage left. The former cheerleader's corpse is gone, and in its place is a new zombie, one that used to be a lawyer in its former life. Remnants of a suit still hang from its body, but most of its skin is missing entirely. Its legs, however, work just fine. It charges across the stage, foam dripping from its mouth. Christopher stumbles backward and swings wildly until the blade makes contact with the approaching monstrosity. It bites into the shredded muscle, clinging to the zombie's arm, and remains stuck as both figures fall to the ground. Christopher barely manages to crawl from beneath the rabid creature before being bitten.
Bet this bat is looking pretty good right about now, huh?
The ringmaster offers the bat to Christopher, and it is ripped from his grasp as the young man scrambles away from the lunging zombie. Armed once more, Christopher turns back and swings like a man possessed. He's still smiling, but his eyes are clenched shut. The first strikes into the zombie's shoulder and neck, but the third and fourth finally make contact with its head. Christopher is sprayed with blackened blood and brain matter as the zombie collapses, but he continues to swing. Only when the ringmaster plucks the bat away does he stop. His eyes open, his back straightens, and his smile widens.
Bravo, good sir. An excellent demonstration. Isn't he something, folks? I don't know about you, but I'm dying to see how he does in Lesson 3, Evasive Action. After all, sometimes the best defense is simply living to fight another day.
The lights shut off, leaving both the stage and audience in total darkness. Moments later, numerous spotlights reveal the previous zombie is gone, and the stage has been converted into something resembling a miniature skate park. There are stairs, ramps, walkways, and randomly placed barriers. The ringmaster remains hidden in the shadows, one hand on Christopher's shoulder. The young man is covered in grime, his clothes are ripped, and his neck bleeds from fresh scratch marks. But he is once again composed and wearing the same soulless smile.
Now, Chris, can I call you Chris? All you have to do is survive for 60 seconds. Piece of cake, right? Right?
The ringmaster disappears in a cloud of smoke, and a new, snarling zombie appears at each end of the stage. They immediately hone in on their prey and charge towards him. Christopher runs up a flight of stairs to a platform with ramps splitting into 3 directions. The male zombie attempts to run up the left section, but quickly slides back to the bottom. The female uses the stairs with more success, and Christopher slides down the ramp's right side. He runs up an adjacent 6-foot ramp onto a long walkway, but the zombies are quickly gaining. Before they can pounce, he leaps from the walkway's edge, and his foot snaps to the side upon landing. Christopher attempts to stand, but his foot hangs at an awkward angle, and he collapses with his first step. Then the zombies are upon him. They tear into the flesh of his back and begin to feast. The audience is captivated, unfazed by the young man's dying screams. Only when he falls silent and his body goes limp do the lights once again flash. When they return, the obstacle course and zombies are gone. All that remains is an empty stage and the ringmaster, standing front and center, taller than ever.
And that was Lesson 4, Inevitable Death. Give it up for Chris one more time. Folks, you might think you've seen something, but let me tell you, you ain't seen nothing. Our next performer hails all the way from Manchester, England. He fought and died during the Anglo-Spanish War, but he wasn't allowed to rest in peace. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to meet the vampire, Albert Thorstein!
For several seconds, nothing happens. Then a bat swoops down to center stage where it morphs into a man. Albert is short and burly. His black hair is slicked back and his black suit is of the finest quality. He bows deeply and tosses a rose to a beautiful young lady in the front row.
Well, I think Albert has chosen our next volunteer. What do you say, Heather?
The spotlight centers on a blonde woman in her mid-20s. Her red eyes glisten and her smile stretches wide across her face. She waves modestly to the crowd as she makes her way onto the stage.
Heather Campbell, everyone, here all the way from Rhode Island. Heather is a traveling nurse, an undevoted wife and mother of 2, as well as a recreational shoplifter. Ooh, you sly devil, you. She also enjoys moonlit walks on the beach, cooking, and yoga. Now, Mr. Thorstein, if you would do us the honor of demonstrating the talent for which you are most famous.
The ringmaster vanishes, leaving only Albert and Heather standing opposite one another. The vampire captures her gaze and stares deeply into her eyes. They cross the stage slowly until their faces are only inches apart, and Heather tilts her head slightly to one side. Albert tenderly pushes her hair away and lowers his mouth towards her exposed flesh. Just before making contact, 2 fangs extend past his lips and sink into the large vein running along her neck. Blood pours from between them and paints the stage red. All the while, Heather stares ahead dreamily. Eventually, her body and face relax, but traces of her smile remain. With the utmost care, Albert lowers the lifeless body onto the stage and takes another bow before methodically cleaning the blood from his face.
Quite a sight, is it not? To watch the very life drain from one into another. From the living to the dead. These fearsome creatures can do far more than mesmerize their victims. Now, I don't want to give away all of Albert's secrets, but I think he can indulge us just a little. Of course, we'll need another volunteer.
Every hand flies into the air. People are standing in their seats, jumping for the chance to be selected. Some of their fingernails are broken and bleeding. Their smiles are stretched paper thin and their lips are beginning to crack. The spotlight searches the crowd, shrinking until it lands on a grey-haired man wearing an army jacket. He punches the air in victory and makes his way onto the stage.
Carl Price, get on up here! Carl here is a retired widower with 1 son and 3 grandchildren. Not that you ever see them. At 18, he joined the military to escape his abusive father, but went AWOL after basic training. Shortly after, he moved to Mexico, where he found work as a mechanic until returning to the US just last year. Let's give him a little encouragement, folks. This one's gonna be a doozy.
The ringmaster vanishes, leaving Carl and Albert alone on the otherwise empty stage.
A pleasure to meet you, sir.
Albert extends his hand and Carl automatically reaches for it. Once eye contact is established, Carl's body relaxes just as Heather's before him.
There we are. That's it. Just relax. Do you remember me, Carl? From primary school? We were best mates, weren't we?
Carl nods in affirmation while staring dreamily ahead.
That's brilliant. You're doing very well. Now, as you know, old chum, I am a vampire. As such, I've got some handy tricks up my sleeve, and I'd like you to help demonstrate a few. Do you suppose that'd be alright?
Carl nods, and a small line of drool escapes from the corner of his mouth.
You see, the best part about being a vampire is the near indestructibility. I am 246, yet I appear not a day over 35. I've been shot, stabbed, decapitated, hanged, drowned, even taken a ride through a meat grinder. Yet, here I stand. Holy water, garlic, crosses, silver, stakes, these do nothing. Fire. That's the only way. Long exposure to sunlight will do the trick, but if you're trying to kill a vampire, you probably don't want to wait. Hold on. What's this then? You lot look skeptical. Seems like you might lead a little proof in the pudding.
A small shadowy void appears floating next to Albert. His hand disappears as he reaches inside to retrieve a long sword. After holding it aloft for the crowd to see, he offers it to Carl.
I can assure you, this is a very real, very sharp sword.
Albert removes his shirt and jacket, folds them neatly, and places them inside the void like a suitcase.
What Carl is going to do is slice its tip straight across my lower abdomen. And we're going to stand right at the very front of the stage so you can all get the best view possible. Come along now, Carl. You stand here, and I'll stand here. Perfect. Now, I'm going to need you lot in the front row to pay especially close attention. Please take note that this is my real skin and not some fake torso. See how it jiggles as one with my back. Not all vampires are fit and trim. That's another myth. Alright, Carl. Don't be shy. Just cut nice and deep, right between the hips.
Albert spreads his arms wide and Carl steps forward, swinging the blade with all his strength. It bites into the vampire's flesh and slides across his abdomen with a dark spray of blood. Albert turns to face the audience, and there's a slight second's delay before his skin splits apart. Intestines spill to the floor with a sickening splat. And the vampire's smile widens as he allows the organs to fall through his open fingers. Blood runs down the stage and under the front row, almost black and too thick. But that too stops as the vampire's wound seals itself shut.
Good thing I don't need those anymore. Thank you.
Albert uses his foot to push the leftover organs from the stage, and returns to the floating void where he retrieves his shirt and jacket.
I would have liked to show you a proper decapitation, but I'm afraid the healing process isn't conducive to our showtime. Fear not, I think you'll enjoy this bit just as much. Bravo, mate. You gutted me like an old pro, you did. And you did it because you trust me, right? Because we're old chums. And our friendship makes you happy, yes? You are happy, aren't you, Carl?
Carl is extremely happy. You can see the happiness in his bulging, bloodshot eyes, and he nods emphatically. He's so happy that he cannot stop smiling. So happy that his heart is racing faster than it can handle. He is so happy that he does not care that his sweat-soaked clothes are clinging to his skin and hampering his movement. He cares only for his dear friend Albert and their spectacular show.
Good man. This is a good man right here, ladies and gents. And we're going to need Carl to hang on to that sword a little longer. You see, what truly makes a vampire dangerous isn't our superhuman speed or strength. It's not the fact that we gain these attributes by drinking your blood. It's our power to persuade. I'm gonna let you lot in on a secret. I've never met Carl before today. Bloke's a total stranger. Oh, but shh, don't let on.
Albert moves to stand next to Carl and places an arm around his pointed shoulders.
Oh, actually, before we start the next bit, do you have your phone on you? Yeah, of course you do. That's perfect. I've been falling on some hard times lately. Believe it or not, this gig doesn't exactly rake in the dough.
Could you just open your banking app for me? Great. Oh, you go, Carl. Oh, you've built yourself a respectable nest egg here. Proper adult you are. Now, be a mate and transfer it, all of it, to me.
Carl's fingers twitch only once as Albert recites his account number.
And bippity boppity, bling bling, now I'm rich. Oh, stop, it was nothing. Kid stuff, really. It's true, we all regard currency as one of our most vital assets. But shouldn't we value our bodies even more? All living creatures share the base instinct to preserve one's own life. It's encoded in our very DNA. So, which is more powerful? That instinct, or my powers of persuasion? Let's find out.
Again, Albert's hand disappears into the void, and out comes a tall, square table which he places between them.
Alright, mate. I'm sure you're wondering what we're going to do with that sword, and it's time to find out. Go ahead and place your left hand on the table. Brilliant. Now, use your other hand to cut it off. Oh, and be sure to aim just where it connects to the wrist. I do apologise, my assistant forgot to pack the axe, so it may take a few swings. I'll be having a stern chat with Debbie after the show, you can believe that.
With no hesitation, Carl raises the sword and brings it down onto his arm, just below the wrist, cutting it to the bone. He swings it again, higher this time, but it isn't enough. He swings a third time and a chunk of meat is flung to the floor in the growing pool of blood. On the fourth swing, his hand finally falls free. Carl should be screaming, but the only sound coming from him is a twisted, maniacal laughter. Albert raises the severed hand in triumph and lets the blood drain into his mouth as the crowd goes wild. Now, plunge that sword through your heart. Carl, whose arm is still spewing blood onto the stage and audience, goes down to his knees, raises the sword once more, and stabs it deep into his chest. His death comes almost instantly as he falls onto his back, the sword left embedded like a dark Excalibur. The audience rises to give a standing ovation, though several collapse, their shaking legs unable to support them. Others' hands are bleeding where the skin has begun to peel, but still they clap. Their cheers sound strange, as if their voices had grown hoarse, but that does not stop them. They are still cheering when the stage goes dark. The ringmaster returns center stage with a bow and only his dim, green flame for light. The fire spreads from his hat to his cane as he lifts it high above his head and slams it back into the ground with a dramatic thud.
Albert Thorstein, ladies and gentlemen!
Well, now we can say we have seen some things tonight, can't we? And there's still one act remaining. One in which I personally play a part. But first, a quick introduction for my co-star. When I say Reaper, many of you will envision the Grim Reaper, a name mortals often ascribe to a personified version of death itself. As a species, you love to put faces on everything. But death is simply that. Death. It is a word used to describe the soul's transition from one plane to the next. Nothing more. This term is, however, derived from the creature you're about to see. But much truth has been lost in the lore. Just as vampires drink blood, Reapers consume souls. But no, they do not attack the living. Reapers exist between this world and the next. They are part of neither, yet occupy both. Therefore, they can only interact with those already in the process of crossing over, or those who are likewise part of both.
A phantom-like entity appears next to the ringmaster. It is surrounded by the same soft teal glow as the twins, but its shape is amorphous and constantly changing. Occasionally, the outline of a distorted face appears within the mass, but then it is gone again.
It has 4 limbs one moment and 6 the next. It shifts from the size of a beach ball to a tree and everything in between.
And I'll tell you a little secret of my own. He's my favorite. Or she. Well, it. I'm not quite sure, to be quite honest.
Oh, but isn't it cute?
I came across it in a field hospital during the Black Death. Good times. Good times. We refer to it as the true first Thanksgiving. Bodies everywhere, and all their souls to drink. Of course, this one was trying to keep the whole town to itself. Such a greedy Gus. Little Scabby but tried stealing my souls. And, well, you can see how that ended. As one who can freely travel between the planes, I was able to tame it, though not without cost. Believe it or not, there's some sharp teeth hiding in that glowing blob. The real challenge, however, is keeping it fed. Such an insatiable appetite. One you have to see to believe. And that brings us to our next order of business. Choosing the final volunteers.
Every hand shoots into the air. Those who remain on the floor from their previous collapse climb over their chairs in an attempt to reach just a little higher. Many turn to violence in order to gain an edge, and soon the entire crowd is in chaos. Janice Swartz leaps onto her husband's back, raking her claws across his cheeks. Ian Darby elbows his brother in the face, shattering his nose. Naomi Hicks stabs a random stranger with a pair of scissors, and Daryl Bradford shoves his best friend to the ground, where several others trample him in their own frenzy to be selected.
Now, there's no need to fight. This last performance is a very special one. You will all be our final volunteers.
With an unsettling obedience, the fighting stops, and the audience cheers louder than ever despite their hoarse voices and blistered hands. Their smiles stretch almost to their ears, and several noses have begun to bleed in concert with their eyes.
In my most humble opinion, no circus is complete without a ring of fire!
The ringmaster lifts his still blazing cane once more, stretching his impossibly long arm far over the crowd. With one flick of his wrist, a circle of flames expands outwards until the entire audience is surrounded by a giant ring of green fire. It stands twice as tall as the highest head and slowly shrinks in on the ecstatic crowd. The skin of those on the perimeter begins to melt, sliding from their bodies like chunky soup. Eyeballs boil from their sockets and burst. Some of the crowd leap or drag themselves into the flames, while others wait to be consumed. But they all die laughing. The Reaper floats through the flames freely and effortlessly, consuming their souls like death's Roomba. The ring of fire finally shrinks to a single column and disappears, leaving only piles of ash and a bloated Reaper in its wake. The single exception being a lone figure near the front of the stage.
Hey, you. Yes, you. I'm certainly not speaking to the piles of ash. Surely, you must be wondering why you aren't among them, no? I have spared you because you sparked my interest. My show is not for the audience. It is for me. You see, I am something of a zookeeper. The twins, the zombies, the vampire, and, of course, the Reaper are all a part of my collection. A small part, mind you. I have many more at home. But the sad truth is that they are a very expensive hobby. In order to cut down on cost, I began acquiring their food myself, and promptly grew bored. Then I thought of how badly I've dreamed of being in show business, Not an easy gig to fall into where I come from, and, well, here we are. The only problem was getting people to watch. Not many humans will simply sit through a show waiting to be slaughtered. In fact, some are downright offended if you even ask. That's why I began taking away their free will. But please don't confuse what I do to that of the vampire's performance. My abilities far surpass such simple stage tricks. Anyone can make a man kill himself. What I do is art. But now there's you. Why are you here? I didn't bring you in. I didn't force you to watch, and I certainly didn't force you to enjoy it. Yet, here you stood, all the way to the bitter end, smiling. So tell me, what's wrong with you?
Most heartfelt greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlethems. I eagerly welcome you to Sturgeon's most premier station, Dusklight Radio, hosted by yours truly, the effervescent, ethereal, and immersive Everett J. Blackwell. The first video in our Dusklight Through the Seasons compilation was written by the incomparable Max Voynich. Max has a lot more work available on NoSleep, including a podcast called Happy and We Know It. Max may very well be one of the greatest experimental writers from the UK, and someone I miss very dearly and hope comes back to writing sometime soon. The rest of the productions were written by TJ Lee. Now, normally I'd go into my usual Blackwell spiel here, however, we're at the end of the video. If you've stuck around long enough, this is a sample of what our usual introductions to Dusklight transmissions are like. A link to one of our normal lengthy transmission videos is below. However, for the next 30 days, as of December 15th, you will not be getting those introductions unless it is a special Sturgeon video, such as the next chapter in our ongoing series coming out before the new year. You see, we want to test out the algorithm to see how well YouTube responds to a regular series of posts. So we decided, between myself and the wonderful Vidith, to do a 30 in 30 challenge. 30 days, 30 videos, no days off, except for Christmas, which will make up on the schedule. At the end of that time, we'll look at our metrics, see how well it's responded, if any new listeners have come to the station, and we can then make an informed decision about how we want to progress. I can tell you right now, however, that as of Season 6, in 2026 for Dusklight Radio, we will be going to 3 videos a week, an SCP video on Mondays, and normal, NoSleep or CreepyPasta story on Wednesdays, and on Fridays we'll be doing something special. Every single month we'll be doing a compilation of our best stories from the month, and you'll also get a special feature-length Sturgeon or feature-length CreepyPasta story with immersive sound design, SFX, and voice acting. Very few things are going to be changing except the quality of our production. With that, I bring you to our outros, which are very important because this is the time where we thank all of our patrons for making this possible. If you want to sign up, it's as little as $1 a month and you get exclusive content, early access videos and stories, updates, and more. You can even suggest videos and stories for me to cover on the channel. But times are tough and we will always be grateful for your support no matter what form it comes in. Financial, spiritual, corporeal, maniacal, whatever you want. Either way, it really helps us out. And consider joining the Discord. We have a wonderful community at the listening station and we'd love to have you there. Dusklight gives thanks to, first, our Purple Crayon Eaters, Echo Kane, Gail Allstott, Alex, Mike, Candyman Gloving, Ashabel, Amara, Fi, Max, and Feeny Von Kama.
Our janitors, Allie, Shane Lewis, Dux, Joy Flint Healy, Sabine Eclipse, Death 31, Scott, Heather Cayley, Adrian R., Amy, Arkham Cookie, and Alex Nunez. Our nightmare detectives, Deliria, Melanie Schaefer, and Fox Clifford. Our void walkers, Josh Woods and Professor CreepyPasta. And of course, our Blackwell family. Great Uncle Ven Blackwell, who really seems to be hanging around the furnishings lately. I could swear that I've seen him trying to reanimate something from in the wallpaper. He keeps stroking it softly and saying, "Hush, little one, soon you can be free." Ethan Blackwell, the master of repo and infuriating the outer gods alongside his BFF, Jimmy. Jackal Blackwell, the scourge of gas station sushi outlets. Clue Blackwell, the twisting, shambling horror. Tabitha Blackwell, wearing a muscle tee with Kaio's face as a skull she smashed, declaring herself the Spine Queen. And of course, Papa Kaio Blackwell, preparing his greatest weapon, the Spine Lord, and his many, many legions of bone fragments. We love and fear you, Papa, and we thank you humbly for your patronage and look to see you bright and early for Dusklight orientation. Purple crayons and existential dread will be provided. And one last time, listeners, close your eyes and breathe with me. Remember, no matter how bad things are, how cruel people can be, and how heavy your shoulders may feel with the weight of the world bearing down on them, Dusklight will always be here to lift the load and provide you with some respite. Drink some hot cocoa with chocolate sprinkles and fat marshmallows. Have some s'mores. Watch a video about liminal spaces, and sleep on the cool side of the pillow with the window open and the stars twinkling down on you. Start and end each day with kindness in your heart. You matter, you are loved, and every day is another chance. I'll see you again when the sun sets and dusk enters the station.